Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
Man, I'll tell you, a wild game last night for the Predators. It looked like they came out there at the beginning like they were kind of half-assing it, and then all of a sudden they got down, and then they got back in the game, and then they got down, and then who knows. You know, we may not see the Predators play for like a week and a half or something crazy like that. Now that their season is over. We got a lot to do today, though. And I want to start on this. Yesterday, because of that Predators game, we had a short show. We were out at 5 o'clock. And so there were some topics that it kind of spilled over into today that I want to pick up on. And I actually want to reply to 2 text messages that came into the text line yesterday, and I wrote them down because I wanted to talk about them today. It was towards the end of the show yesterday, and I'm like, okay, it's the pre-draft time. We need to sit down. We need to basically hash out every scenario possible and then decide what's what when the Titans end up on the clock. For instance, we went on the show 3 years ago. We kicked it around, me, Caroline, and Ian. We went over what medical information we had about Caleb Farley, and we said, all right, what do we think, in or out? And we decided out. So when they drafted Caleb Farley, it was like, I don't know about that. So you got to prepare for all the scenarios. So there were 2 specific text messages that came after a caller brought up the idea of Drake May falling in the draft to the 7th overall pick. Now, my opinion is this. If Drake May falls to the 7th overall pick, and I do not think that is going to happen, but as we learned last year with Will Levis being available in round 2, anything on draft night is possible. If Drake May falls to the 7th pick, I draft him, and then I trade Will Levis, knowing that I probably won't get a first-round pick in return for Levis, but I can be hopeful that, they could find some kind of trade and everything else that they could do. And people were mad. One texter texted in and said, you have a franchise quarterback in Levis. You don't trade him for Drake May. That was the first guy. The second guy said, quote, Brian Callahan doesn't take the Titans job if Levis isn't his quarterback. Amy wants Will to be the guy. No way the Titans would be taking Drake May. Let me say this. First and foremost, this is not a knock on Will Levis. My stance on Will Levis has been very clear from the very beginning. This time last year, I had watched Will Levis's tape, and I told you I liked Will Levis. I didn't love him. I loved Anthony Richardson, but I liked Will Levis. And I would have taken Will Levis with the 11th overall draft choice last year after Anthony Richardson was off the board at 4. So I've always liked Levis. You guys were the ones that, he sucks, Jared. He didn't beat Tennessee and Vanderbilt. And I was like, I like him. Then the Titans took him. Some people turned over. Some people didn't. I stayed true of I like Will Levis. Will Levis went ham against the Atlanta Falcons. You guys, franchise quarterback. And I was like, I like him. Levis had some bad games, like Tampa Bay, Jacksonville on the road. The stats say he was good in the Jacksonville game. He was terrible. Just the team was terrible and everything. And I stayed true to how I felt about Levis. I didn't think Levis had much of a chance last year. I like Levis now. But I'm right there in the middle when it comes to Will Levis. I could see this going either way. And I truly believe that that is the only right opinion to have when it comes to Will Levis right now. Anything else, whether you are one of these haters that just thinks, oh, man, Levis is not the guy. He couldn't win at Kentucky. He puts mayonnaise in his coffee. All of that is a gross mischaracterization, in my opinion, of the work that Will Levis has done. But if you're somebody that's going to sit here and text into the show and say, you have a franchise quarterback in Levis, you don't trade that you've got the answer to the biggest problem this franchise has had for 20 years. And Levis hasn't done that. And again, I'm not knocking Levis when I say if May falls to me at 7, I'm taking him. The same way I would say if Caleb Williams, supposedly a generational quarterback talent, if Caleb Williams falls to me at 7, I have to take him. He's not going to, but I have to. Over the last 2 years, Drake May has thrown for 62 touchdowns and 16 interceptions in college. Will Levis in his last 2 years at UK, 43 and 23. So Levis, compared to May, threw for 19 less touchdowns and threw for, 7 more interceptions? That is a massive difference. And that's just, again, starting the difference between the two. Here's another one. Drake May is 21 years old, folks. By the time opening day comes around, he'll be 22. Will Levis had not even started a game at Kentucky until he was 22 years old. So on opening day, Will Levis will be 25 and Drake May will be 22. Usually tie goes to the younger guy. And then the third thing, which I think should not be underestimated, Will Levis is under contract for 3 more years on a rookie contract. The hope is that Levis hits, and then you pay him $300 million and adjust from there, but hey, you got a franchise quarterback. May would be on a rookie contract if you draft him for 5. So again, better college player, Drake May. Better in terms of what the analysts and the people that have done this, the pro prospects, the former GMs, they think May's the better prospect. I heard Mark Dominic, the former general manager of the Bucs, he said that he has him number 2 behind Caleb Williams. Rick Spielman has May as a tier 1 likely to be a Pro Bowler prospect. And Tim Hasselbeck, who comes on our station all the time, Tim called his games on the ACC network, and he absolutely raves about Drake May. Drake May is an A-plus quarterback prospect. Now, that doesn't mean he'll be a superstar. Joey Harrington was an A-plus quarterback prospect. David Carr was an A-plus quarterback prospect. But Drake May goes number 1 in a lot of other drafts. This isn't just he's the 4th guy in an okay quarterback class. No. Drake May is typically a 1-1 choice. And Will Levis was never that kind of prospect. And again, this is coming from somebody who thought the Titans should have drafted him 11th last year. And then I think there's kind of this reality when it comes to Levis that people don't want to admit, especially the people that texted in yesterday all mad about, Amy wants Will to be the guy. I hope Amy wants whatever's in the best interest of the Titans to win. And I think we can all agree, and she would probably agree too, that the best interest of winning revolves around finding a franchise quarterback. So forget about who it is. I'm sure she loved Ryan Tannehill too. She gave Tannehill a big hug before they walked into the locker room after the Jacksonville game. Tannehill's not the quarterback anymore. But here's the reality that a lot of people don't want to admit. And it's probably some of the same people that hated Levis before the Titans drafted him and then changed their tune because it's what they wanted to believe. But Will Levis has not proven anything in the NFL. All he proved last year is that he's not a total bum. Basically, he did what Malik Willis couldn't do as a rookie. Like Levis looks like he can play quarterback in the NFL. But that's it. Now look, Bryce Young didn't prove that last year. Anthony Richardson didn't prove that last year because he didn't play. Aiden O'Connell, I guess, proved to the Raiders that he can't play, so they went out and they signed Gardner Minshew as a bridge guy or their starters. But the amount of Titan fans out there that are like, franchise quarterback! I'm like, whoa, now. Levis is far from that. As of right now, there is a lot of work to do in order to get there. So if you pretend that that's true, you're only kidding yourself. And if you ran the team, you'd be hurting it because you'd be believing what you want to believe. You'd want to affirm your belief that your team has the guy and you're on your way to a championship instead of admitting reality, which is what the information is telling us, which is right now, you're not there. He's not there. Now, in most cases, he's not supposed to be there, right? It's year one. Vince Young was Rookie of the Year and made the Pro Bowl. And, well, we know how that ended up. So to me, this incredibly unlikely scenario. But again, Will Levis falling to the second round this time last year felt like an incredibly unlikely scenario. But this unlikely scenario is a no-brainer to me. And I say that as somebody who likes Levis and somebody who thinks there's a chance he can be a good quarterback. But again, we're talking about the ability to draft an elite quarterback prospect in Drake May. And let's say this happens. Titans are on the clock. Let's say this happens, right? Number one, Chicago goes Caleb Williams. Number two, Washington goes Jaden Daniels. Number three, New England goes J.J. McCarthy. And remember, Charles Robinson said on Robbie and Joe last week that he heard from someone. I don't think this is true, but I think Charles is telling the truth, but I think that, the fact that New England would have him number one on their board, McCarthy, I don't believe. But let's just say that's true. So they go J.J. McCarthy 3, which would be crazy, but crazy things happen in this draft. Remember Cleveland Farrell in 2019. Marvin Harrison goes 4. Malik Neighbors goes 5. The Giants are at 6. Now, I would assume the Giants would take Drake May, but who knows? Maybe they don't like him. If that happens, I'm picking up the phone. I mean, the card's already written. I'm picking up the phone. I'm calling Minnesota, Denver, the Raiders, and I'm asking for next year's first-round draft choice for Will Levis, knowing that they're going to say no. I'll absolutely get turned down by the Raiders, probably get turned down by Minnesota. Denver, maybe they'll do it because Peyton, maybe he loves Levis. I don't know. But when they all say no, I'll turn around and ask for next year's second, and I bet I could probably get that out of Denver, and that would be that. Because I'm not passing on an A-plus quarterback prospect because my quarterback went crazy in his first start and led a fourth quarter comeback against the Dolphins in a game that he threw a pick six. That's all Levis did last year. And I like Levis, but that's all he did last year. So I feel like we've talked about this. Anything's possible in the draft. You have to go over all the scenarios so that when you're on the clock, you can make the right decision and you don't have to argue about it or discuss it because you've already done the arguing, you've already done the discussing. Well, this is the unlikely scenario. If Drake May falls to the 7th pick, I am taking him. And then I will figure out what to do with Levis after the fact. Because there are only so many elite players in this draft, and he's one of them. And he plays quarterback. He's younger, he'll be cheaper, and he's a better prospect. It's like I say, it's not personal. I don't have any beef against Will Levis. I don't even know Drake May. It's personnel. I am focused on what's in the best interest of the Titans. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on that. So that's how we're starting today. Again, people in the text line yesterday, Amy wants Will to be the guy. I'm sure she does. So does Jared. But if Jared had an opportunity to get a better quarterback, Jared would take it. And I would hope that Amy would probably do the same thing too. A lot of you want to weigh in, so we'll get into this, 615-737-1025. And there's a truth about your young quarterback and other young quarterbacks. Titan fans don't want to hear this. We'll get to that, plus what Tim Hasselbeck says about this situation. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
if Drake May's stock does slip and he falls to 7 to the Tennessee Titans, should the Titans take him?
100%. 100%. I'm telling you what, if his stock is slipping at the combine, I'd like to know what for. Size, athleticism, arm strength, and then the interview process. You guys think, I've had, I called his first start, and I've called his, I guess it would have been his last game against NC State this past season because he didn't play in the bowl game. I had him a number of times, had him in production meetings a number of times. He's going to be super impressive in the interview process. So to me, when I hear hey, his stock is dropping, that feels like it has to be smokescreen to me. It has to be, because I've sat there and I've experienced what the interview process would seem like with him. And I don't think that there are going to be teams that walk away from interacting with him and think that guy can't be a franchise quarterback. I don't think that. That would be the most unlikely scenario that I could imagine.
Tim Hasselbeck on with our midday show about a month ago. And he said, look, if he's there at 7, take him. I did his games. I'm telling you, I know the kid. You take him. I don't think it's possible because I like the kid so much and he's such a good quarterback. You take him. And I haven't gone through the text line yet. I do want to get to your phones. Again, all I'm saying is if Drake May's there at 7, to me it's a no-brainer. You take Drake May and then you figure it out with Levis. And I don't understand this idea of, well, we used a second-round pick last year on the quarterback, so we can't get a better quarterback this year. How many of you wish you could go back in time and tell John Robinson with the 5th overall pick in 2017 to draft Patrick Mahomes because Mariota ain't that good? Nobody ever talks about it, but that's reality. And the whole name to the game is finding the right quarterback, and you know it. And again, Drake May is an A-plus quarterback prospect. Rick Spielman has his tiers of players. As a former GM he was doing on a CBS podcast. Tier 1, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. Not Joe Alt, not Brock Bowers, not Roma Dunze, not Olu Fashanu, not these other guys we're talking about, but Drake May. And again, the entire league didn't like Levis as a prospect, including you, because you drafted a freaking guard before you drafted Will Levis. So now you're going to tell me after the 3-6 record Levis put up with a 58% completion percentage that you guys are going to tell me an 84.2 in those 9 games. You're going to say, oh no, Jared, pass on the traditional number 1 quarterback prospect who's got the measurables, who's got the stats, who's got the tape. Pass on that. No. I want what's best for the Titans. Some of you want what's best for your opinion. And those are two totally different things. Phone lines driven by Wilson County Hyundai. But I guess Hasselbeck's an idiot. I guess Spielman's an idiot. I guess Dominic's an idiot. I guess Hasselbeck's an idiot. I guess Stillman's an idiot. I guess everybody's stupid because you want to believe that you've got the next Dan Marino. I'd love for Levis to be the next Dan Marino. But he's not that yet. And he hasn't given us any proof that shows us that he's going to be that. He's given us enough to show us that he's not going to be some bum. And that is truly a step in the right direction in year 1. But I also lived through Vince Young, so I don't get too carried away about what happens in year 1. James in Ashland City is going to kick us off. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. What's up, James?
Hey, Jared. There's a lot of times you take a lot of hot takes, and I don't agree with them all the time, but I think I'm with you on this. It's just, again, before I even go into Drake May, the possibility of him being there at 7, and I think I've heard you say this too, I think Caleb Williams is overrated from what I've seen. There's people out there that keep chirping that he's a generational prospect. I don't think so. And I think if Mays does fall to 7, I think it's a no-brainer. You got to take it. What kills me about – we had this conversation last year. And who do we take at quarterback? And again, you had all your Tennessee Volunteer fans calling the show saying, take Hendon Hooker, and all the Alabama fans saying, take Bryce Young. But none of us really thought, honestly, that Levis would fall that far back. So anything's possible. And, of course, we need to address the offensive line, as you know, but I would take Drake Mays. I think, personally, he's the best quarterback next to Jaden Daniels, and I'll hang and listen to what you got to say. Thanks for taking my call, Jared.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think as far as, like, the actual talent's concerned, there's no way to me, there's no way to argue that Caleb Williams isn't the top quarterback in the class. And I'm not a Caleb Williams fan. I mean, I've joked that if I was Chicago, I would hate having that pick because I have to take him. Like, there is no option here. Their option was to take a quarterback last year or not. They passed on it. When Carolina got the worst record, they were forced into taking Caleb Williams. There's no way around it. You can't not take the most talented guy, no matter how kooky and odd all of the extracurriculars seem to be with Caleb Williams. As far as May's concerned, again, to me, he is a traditional number one quarterback. Levis was never that. Not even to you. Again, you took a guard. And when it comes to, well, Jared, we got to worry about the offensive line, or we got to worry about the receivers, or we got to worry about the defense, or we got to, what is the position? Whenever you have an expansion franchise, what is the position that gets taken first? The last expansion franchise, the Houston Texans, drafted David Carr, number one overall. When you have a team that is completely hitting the reset button with the number one overall pick, a la the Bengals in 2020, after that god-awful year in 2019 where Andy Dalton was gone and they were moving on to a new era, what position do you pick first? Their line was terrible. Their defense was awful. It wasn't just Andy Dalton, but they went quarterback. When you hit the reset button, you start at quarterback. And I'm not saying that the Titans have to hit the reset button. What I'm saying is, if you've got the quarterback, then you go from there. But until you've got the quarterback, you don't. And right now, you don't know if you have the quarterback or not. And so I'm comparing these guys as prospects, and it's not close. It is not close. Will Levis probably had a mid to late first round grade. Drake May has a top-of-the-board grade. It's not close between the two. And the amount of people that are like, hey, Levis is our quarterback, Jared. I mean, you're crazy. I'm like, so would you pass on him if Caleb Williams was there? Because Caleb Williams and Will Levis, as far as talent's concerned, it's not close. It is Caleb Williams. So we're just so committed to Will Levis based off a 3-6 and an 84.2 quarterback rating? I mean, really? More your phone, 615-737-1025. Plus, I ran some numbers. And revisionist history is going to say that this wasn't the case, but I know better. And so we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, and then we're right back to your phones right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Sounds take on the Omaha Storm Chasers at First Horizon Park. Pregame is at 6:20. First pitch is at 6:35. Coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at 94.9thefan.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning.
I think his mechanics are fine. He needs a little bit better timing and footwork, but I think that'll come. And then he didn't play enough last year to learn how to recognize defenses and blitzes. I keep coming back to blitzes. Not enough people focus on this. Recognition of the blitz is what the quarterback has to do. It's critical. Otherwise, he's going to get himself killed. He's going to get sacked, and he's going to turn the ball over. And what happens is the first couple of times they get sacked, they say, whoa, enough is enough. The ball is coming out fast. And once that happens, now interceptions follow as sure as night follows day. So you have to learn to recognize the blitz and get into the right protection and get into the right play.
That was Bill Polian last week talking about Will Levis, saying he's got to learn how to recognize the blitz. And, see, this is the thing where Twitter's mad at me today, Ian.
Oh, boy.
Because, Titans Twitter, the same Titans Twitter that hated Will Levis before they drafted him, Titans Twitter's convinced Levis is a franchise quarterback.
That's right.
And that Polian cut is exactly what I'm talking about. He has to learn how to pick up the blitz. Will he? I don't know. Is he smart enough to learn how to pick up the blitz? I think he is. They got him a coach. Unlike the bozos that they had in here, they got him a coach who, really, I think, has an idea of how to coach the quarterback. I mean, that's why we wanted the guru. I think it is totally plausible that he'll learn how to do that. But I'm not assuming that he will. See, that's the difference. We talk about this all the time on the program, affirmation versus information. If you're convinced Will Levis is a franchise quarterback, that is because you want to affirm your belief that your team is on the right path. Me, I think Levis has shown us enough to say there's something there. Now, that Miami comeback, there's something there. But it does not mean that he will be a franchise quarterback. In fact, Titan fans going to hate this. Will Levis through 1 year is not what Marcus Mariota was through 1 year. And I know I died on the Mariota hill, and I think the Titans ruined Mariota as much as Mariota just didn't have the stones to be a starting quarterback and a good one in the NFL. But Mariota had a higher completion percentage. Mariota threw for more yards per game. Mariota had more yards per attempt. Mariota had 19 touchdowns. Levis had 8. Mariota had a higher quarterback rating. And Mariota did all of that on a team that the GM called the worst collection of talent he had seen in 40 years of doing it. Ian, back that up.
I think that sounds about right.
That 2015 Titan team. Antonio Andrews was the starting running back, not Derrick Henry. The wide receivers were Justin Hunter, Kendall Wright, and DGB, not DeAndre Hopkins. That team was abysmal. And Mariota, again, who was an A-plus quarterback prospect, these guys fail. Mariota had a better rookie season than Will Levis. It is not even close. And so when you guys tell me that, oh, no, Jared, he's our guy, I'm like, I know. I used to lead that cheer when Mariota was the quarterback. Remember Mariota went to Tampa Bay, first game ever, set a record as the best start ever for a quarterback, period. There's 3 guys that have had 4 touchdown passes in their first start. Mariota, Fran Tarkenton, and Levis. And I said the Monday after that Mariota start against Tampa Bay, I said, why can't the Titans have the next Aaron Rodgers or the next Tom Brady? And then they went on the road and lost to Johnny Manziel in Cleveland. So Levis had a great start. Then he kind of came back to earth, had a great comeback against the Dolphins, but that's it. That's it. And so now you guys want to say franchise quarterback? You guys said the same thing about Mariota, and unlike me saying, oh, yeah, you guys were dumb for saying that, I'm admitting to the fact that I said it too. This is what learning is. My past experience, I put the cart before the horse. Now, I'm like, you're right here in the middle. It could go either way. But at the same time, Drake May is an A-plus quarterback prospect. If he's there, you got to take him. You have to take the A-plus prospect. Kyle has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hey, Jared. I'm crazy about Will Levis, no secret. And go with Floyd's theory. Give Drake May to the Titans and then send Will Levis over there to North Carolina. I don't think Drake May looks too pretty and has a good rookie season, man. So he's got a big arm. I've been studying a lot of draft prospects for the Titans, the safeties and corners. All he does is throw picks, is what I've been seeing. Just pick, cost him the game. So I'm biased. I'm also a Vols fan, though. My best man at my wedding is a huge Kentucky fan, so I've been studying Will for 3 years now, so I know all about him. But he's the guy. He's the guy.
Based off what?
I can just see him play, man. We had nothing for him last year. We had a college offense caliber. He was getting hit so soon.
Mariota was in a similar situation, performed better, and ended up not being the guy.
Well, Marcus had injury issues too, and
Levis doesn't.
I'm more worried about Will's injury issues than I am his performance. I did not really like Marcus when he first got here. I told my wife I was wrong. The first 2 years, I told my whole family I was wrong. Marcus is a good quarterback. My bad. Turned out I was right, and I wasn't happy about it, but it worked out.
So you think Marcus is a good quarterback?
No. I'm saying at first I thought he wasn't the guy. He was never going to be it. And we drafted him 2 years. He looked good, and then it turned out he wasn't, and I was right about that.
So I want to bring up your earlier point about Drake May throwing interceptions. You do know Will Levis threw 13 interceptions his last year in college, and Drake May threw 9.
I do, but the talent wasn't even close.
Oh, okay.
He had freshman receivers
Kyle,
this year.
Kyle, I appreciate your call. See, this again is what we're talking about, affirmation. He wants to believe that that's true. Like, he wants to believe that Drake May sucks, and he wants to believe that Will's the guy. I mean, he starts the conversation off talking about how, hey, what would Floyd say about switching them and putting them in other places? And I think there's some truth to that. Like, when I think about Levis and J.J. McCarthy, like, let's see what Will would have done in Michigan with that offensive line that won the Joe Moore Award and Blake Corum at running back and Jim Harbaugh as his coach and a good defense. And let's see what JJ would do with a bunch of crap bums and Chris Rodriguez, who was suspended half the time as his running back at UK. I think you'd be surprised about how great JJ McCarthy would look or not look if that were the case. But I don't understand how you can just say Will's the guy. You know, everything that you said about Will, Marcus had injury problems. Right, and so has Levis each of the last 2 years. Well, Drake May throws too many interceptions. Well, Will Levis threw more in college than Drake May did. Drake May is 21 years old. Levis did not take a snap at UK until he was 22. That matters. So I'm not here to say that Levis can't be the guy. I'm just here to say that if you believe that Levis is the guy, then to me, that is what the Kentucky basketball fans are doing. Kentucky basketball fans didn't want Mark Pope to be their coach because they thought they were entitled to Jay Wright or Brad Stevens or Tom Izzo or one of those, big name coaches. Then they got turned down by all of them, and they hired Mark Pope, and they at first thought, this guy. And then Mark Pope gave him a press conference, and they heard some things about, at BYU, they did beat NC State this past year. At BYU, they can't recruit players that have sex and drink alcohol. So, he's our guy. That's what you're doing here. And, again, with Mark Pope, he might be a good coach at UK. I don't know. But I also wasn't screaming when they hired him saying, bad hire. Because I know better than that. Just like when this time last year, you guys yelled at me for saying that I liked Levis as a quarterback prospect, and you guys were like, he sucks! And I was like, I watched the tape, I watched him play Georgia, they scored 6 points, and I walked away from that impressed by Will Levis. because he gave his team a chance. And Levis made 2 mistakes in that game. He threw a dumb interception that he shouldn't have thrown, and right before halftime, Gary Danielson was doing the TV broadcast, and Gary Danielson said that, hey, you've got to, on this drive, make sure that you get a first down or 2, if for no other reason to not give Georgia the football back before the half. And Levis misfired on a 3rd down throw. The running back had to jump up to catch it because it was a bad throw, and he ended up falling to the ground. So then Kentucky had to punt, and Georgia came down and scored a touchdown. And those 2 things really hurt them, but he gave them a chance to win. And I walked out of that impressed. And you guys were like, he sucks, Jared. And again, that's because that's what you wanted to believe then. And now you want to believe that you have a franchise quarterback when there's no evidence. I don't even think right now, like, they'd hate me on the radio in Houston because I lived through Carson Wentz. Like, I remember when Carson Wentz was Mahomes the year before Mahomes was Mahomes in his 2nd year, before he tore his ACL. And so with C.J. Stroud, I would be cautioning everybody saying, hey, like, it's only getting harder from here. It doesn't get easier from here. And I guarantee you the people of Houston would be, oh, no, Jared, we have a franchise superstar quarterback today. Yeah, okay. And Vince Young was Rookie of the Year and made the Pro Bowl his first year. But Levis didn't even do half of what Stroud did last year. So if I'm going to push back on that, how do you not push back on Levis? But nope, caller just said, he's the guy. Okay. 615-737-1025, more your phone, 615-737-1025. And again, the premise is, going over the draft scenarios, if Drake May's there, you take him. That's it. It's not a knock on Levis. It is recognizing the prospect that is Drake May. 615-737-1025. Plus, Rand was kind of asked a question about kind of this idea. We'll do that next year on the program. FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app. The NBA play-in tournament gives teams the chance to play their way into the postseason. So it only seems right that new customers on FanDuel can play their way into $150. Just place any $5 bet and you'll get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, during the NBA playoffs. So that could be 3-pointers made in one of these games. It could be the over-under point total in one of these games. It could be the first basket score. I mean, honestly, it could be anything. Pick what you want. That's the best part. Go to FanDuel.com/JGM to get started. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over in President, Tennessee. First online real money wager, only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
how much research do you do on those top quarterbacks, even though you know you got a pretty good one in Will?
No, I think you have to do the research. If for nothing more, it's like these are going to be guys that you got to play against. You know what I mean? Our division is well positioned, and everybody has a good, young quarterback. And we're going to play each other multiple times a year. But these are going to be potentially the quarterbacks that we got to play to get to our ultimate goal at some point. So being able to study them and have a vision for them, because some of these guys you're only going to play every 4 years. So you're not going to see them that much, but. If nothing else, you're doing them, just to have an idea of who they are and what they're capable of doing.
I can promise you that if the Titans play the Washington Commanders 3 years from now and Drake May's their quarterback, they're not going to go back to, hey, what did our draft notes say about Drake May 3 years ago? I can promise you that. But Rand Carthon's telling you, no, we're doing our work on the quarterbacks. So again, you rank the players. Right? You rank every single one of these players. You rank the board. It is not the needs board. It is the board. And so if you've got Drake May 3 or 2 like Mark Dominic does, and you've got him rated as a 9.0 prospect, and you had Levis rated as a 6.5 last year, to me it's a no-brainer. You take the higher prospect, the younger guy, the longer contract. You do all of that. And yet, boy, people are mad about today's topic. And again, this is just a draft scenario. And there's really one way this scenario happens, which is New England falls in love with J.J. McCarthy. That's the scenario. And even then, I think the Giants probably take him. But this is why you have these discussions, because you never know what's going to happen on draft night. Chase from Bellevue texts in and says, getting a potential star left tackle in Joe Alt and seeing what Levis has to offer with a full season's work feels like the move. So here's the problem with that. I understand. Again, in a vacuum, that makes a lot of sense. But we're not talking about in the vacuum of just this season. We're talking about, probably a decision for the next 2 or 3 years of the Titans. And I think that the best chance for you to have a successful franchise is to have the best quarterback possible. And if you have evaluated Drake May and you think that Drake May is better than the quarterback that you have, which Tim Hasselbeck, who has called Drake May's games and lives in town and goes on our station every week and watches the Titans and knows about Will Levis, if you think Drake May gives you a better chance to win, you draft that younger quarterback. That's it. We never sit there and say, what's the most important thing to get right in the NFL? Left tackle. Because it's not. Quarterback is. David in Portland is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, David.
Hey, Jared. So I just wanted that. Speaking of left tackle, that's what I wanted to ask you. So let's say Rand somehow drafts May at 7. What are you going to do at left tackle to protect him moving forward? So I'll hang up and listen.
Yeah, so I thought that Mark Dominic, made the point. Thank you for your call, David. I think that Mark Dominic made the point when he was talking about wanting to take Brock Bowers. And we brought this up yesterday when I asked Mark, I'm like, so wait a minute. You would take Brock Bowers over Joe Alt. And Dominic told me he would. Because even though he's probably, I won't speak for him, but he's probably like me, doesn't think the world of Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT. He likes Brock Bowers so much that he would start PT at one tackle, and he would use the 4th-round pick to trade up from 38. And I don't know if you can get back. I don't think you can get back into the first round with that, but who knows? To get up and to take a tackle. And so the rookie tackle and PT would be your starters with Drake May at quarterback. And I do think, I would pick up the phone if I drafted Drake May, and I would offer the Denver Broncos, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Las Vegas Raiders Will Levis for next year's first. And my guess is I would get turned down by all 3 of them. But you have to ask. Then after that, I would accept next year's second. Minnesota doesn't have a second-rounder next year. That belongs to the Buffalo Bills because they traded it to the Houston Texans, who traded it to the Bills for Stephon Diggs. Denver doesn't have a second-rounder this year. But they do have a second-rounder, I believe, next year, and so do the Raiders. And I think I don't see the Raiders making that deal. I could see Denver making that deal. And here's why I could see Denver making that deal. Denver doesn't have a quarterback. And so my question to you is, if you're Denver, what do you feel better off with? Will Levis and a player that you can get at 12 this year without next year's second-rounder, or Michael Penix Jr. and next year's second rounder? Because they got to take one of these guys, right? Like, they have to take – Denver has to come over. Jarrett Stidham? You can't start Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. At least I don't think you can. One texter says, even Mariota in his rookie season could not make the pinpoint tight window throws that Levis made last year. Wanting to build around the team that they already have is not an affirmation bias. If I had to choose between Alt and May, I'd take Alt every time. Protecting the quarterback and building on the foundation that we laid in last draft is much more important. First of all, last year's draft, like I did an analysis today. I did a little homework project about tackles, and how many tackles you find in the first round compared to how many tackles that you find in later rounds, to see like, hey, could the Titans have wanted to do this, and could they have, can they take Brock Bowers and then maybe get a tackle later, and could they this and could they? So I did a homework assignment on that, and the thing that I came away with, so I looked at the 2020, 2021, and 2022 drafts, and I was like, okay, how many starters at tackle are in the first round, and how many starters are in rounds 2 through 7? And one thing I kept noticing, because I literally had to go to Pro Football Focus when I would see some of these guys because they were listed as offensive line. Like a guy's taken in the 3rd round, and Pro Football Reference says he's a starter for a season. So now I have to go see, okay, do you start at tackle or do you start at guard? Because that's a very, very different discussion. And most of these guys start at guard. And so it's like, wow, you can get a guard in the 4th round who can start. You can't get a lot of tackles that start. And what did the Titans do last year? They drafted a guard. And then, what did the Titans do? The one pick that I'll tell you hit. Like, the one pick that I'll say, okay, that pick made it. That pick, you did not mess up on that pick as far as that player being a good player as Spears. The problem is, it was absolutely not a need because it was your best player. The free agent market this year, forecasting ahead when Derrick Henry leaves, the free agent market was loaded at running back, and the Chiefs prove you can get a running back in the 7th round. But other than that, it was great. So I don't even look at last year's draft and say, wow, look at what they built on. I look at the fact that they've got a legitimate starting center, they've got 2 legitimate starting receivers, and, maybe they've got a left guard. Maybe. And the 2 running backs. So running back, receiver, center, you're good. Everything else, to me, is still a ginormous question mark. And that's, I think, the biggest problem. A lot of you still want to weigh in on this. 615-737-1025 here on the program. I'm trying to think. Ian, do we want to go to the phones on this next, or do we want to move to another topic? You pick. We got low. I'm
good with phones.
We'll go to your phones on this. Again, we'll reset it. I'm just saying, we have to go over all these draft decisions ahead of time so that on draft night, okay, if this happens, then we're doing this. For me, the discussion is if Drake May's there. And there's one scenario that I see this happening, and I will talk about that next. 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company, 1025-1063. The game score big this spring with Lee Company and the Predators. In the 10K Power Play giveaway, enter for a chance to win a Kohler home generator or $10,000 towards Lee Company Home Services. Go to leecompany.com/giveaway to enter in the 10K Power Play giveaway. Contest entries are accepted until Saturday, April 20th. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian, the people are mad at me.
Yeah, they are.
So I was telling you Twitter was mad at me. You're telling me the YouTube chat is mad at me.
That is correct. They are not happy.
So just so we know, every NFL team right now is sitting in their facility and they are having the draft meetings. Like now is when we hear the discussion of, now is when you stand on the table for somebody. Now is the moment that the table is being stood on. Like that's now. So if there's a guy, like say there's an area scout of the Titans that has the area that has Alabama in it, and this guy just thinks Dallas Turner is the next Lawrence Taylor, this is the time for him to stand on the table and for him to make his case that we've got to take Dallas Turner. So every scenario is being discussed because there are how many combinations before you pick at 7? A gazillion? And that's what they're doing. So the Titans, I am running through the scenario that if Drake May is available with the 7th pick, that the Tennessee Titans then take Drake May, an A-plus quarterback prospect. Rick Spielman had his tears yesterday on his CBS podcast, the old general manager of the Vikings, the guy that drafted Christian Darrisaw with his last first-round pick and Justin Jefferson in the first round the year before that. Tier 1 prospects, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. Tier 2, Roma Dunze, Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, Dallas Turner, Olu Fashanu. Whatever happened to, don't draft for need, roll the dice, play the board. He's telling you. Drake May is in a different tier than Joe Alt. And I remember everything that Spielman said last year. I can promise you he would tell you that May is in a different tier than Levis. And Levis had an okay rookie season. But I'm not losing my panties over what Will Levis did last year, going 3-6, completion percentage under 60, quarterback rating of 84.2, threw for 200 yards a game. I mean, again, he had a great first game, and he had a great comeback against Miami. That's it. Like, that's what he was. And so I see an A-plus quarterback prospect, and I say if you get the opportunity at the A-plus quarterback prospect, you take him. And people are really mad about that. Robbie Stanley texted me, and he said, Robbie hated Mariota. And he said the people whining about drafting Drake May are the same people that say the Titans could have had Mahomes but kept Mariota. He is so right about that. Although I was a Mariota person at the time, and this is a mistake I think I learned from. So I promised more of your phones. Although, Ian, what is the line of the YouTube chat? What's kind of the gist over there?
Just kind of, we have our guy in Levis. This Drake isn't going to fall. Why are we talking about this scenario? This isn't going to happen. We have to get a tackle. What are we going to do there? How do we know that Drake May is the guy if we don't know if Levis is the guy? Just that kind of stuff.
You needed a tackle last year when you drafted Levis, right? Like the idea was, we have to have a tackle. You had to have a tackle last year, and you didn't draft one. Get Andre Dillard. You'd be fine. So here's the scenario, because I'm sure a lot of people are like, that's not going to happen, Jared. Drake May is not going to fall to the Titans. And I think you're right. But I also didn't think Will Levis would be available in the second round last year. So this is how Drake May falls to the Titans. Caleb Williams goes 1, Jaden Daniels goes 2. I think May's going to go number 2, but for argument's sake, again, I think a lot of people think Daniels will go 2. J.J. McCarthy goes 3. And a lot of people are like, well, J.J. McCarthy's not going to go 3. Charles Robinson Friday on Robbie and Rex Road about J.J. McCarthy.
I started to reach out to different personnel individuals as we did our All Juice team. Came across somebody who said, a couple of different individuals. One who said, look, the number 2 pick in the draft, the Washington Commanders, he's definitely in play potentially at that pick. Like, there's no doubt that there are people in that personnel department that like him enough, like his film enough, to take him at number 2. And then number 3, the Patriots, had another individual who said, hey, look around the quarterback workouts. their QB stack. Now it's early still. We're still talking about early April, but their QB stack could have McCarthy at the very top, like not as the third quarterback off the board, not as the second quarterback off the board, but the Patriots may actually like him as the first quarterback coming off the board.
Okay, so the Patriots may like JJ the best. JJ goes third. You know, Ryan Leaf was on with me on Sirius over the weekend, and he said that Arizona and the Chargers probably aren't trading that much because, again, you leave 4 and 5, you lose Harrison and Odunze. Harrison and Neighbors, and those seem, again, Rick Spielman has them in tier 1. Those are the elite of the elites. So Arizona, it doesn't feel like they're going quarterback, though. I would go quarterback if I was Arizona and Drake May was on the board because I think Kyler Murray's a bum. But Arizona goes Marvin. Chargers go with Malik Neighbors, and then the Giants do something crazy. Because, I mean, if the Giants don't take May, then wow. But while it's not likely, all of these things are possible. I mean, we've seen guys fall in the draft and think to ourselves, like, man, that guy, how is that guy still available? Mel Kiper's got him ranked number 21. Or no, Mel Kiper's got him ranked number 8, and he's still there at 21? How is that possible? And again, that's the nature of the draft. And so in a lot of scenarios I wanted to go over today, this is kind of the first one because people got so worked up about it yesterday when I was like, look, I would take May and then figure it out. And people are, no, Levis, he's so good. Oh, he's so good. One texter says, I want to roll with Levis because I'm the same guy who knew Phillip Rivers was a Hall of Famer back when he got drafted. That's great. You want to know what the problem with that is? Phillip Rivers probably is not going into the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, that's a great story that you knew 20 years ago in that first round that you knew that Phillip Rivers was going to the Hall of Fame. And yet, it would not surprise me if Phillip Rivers does not end up in the Hall of Fame, does not end up with a gold jacket. One texter says, yeah, we passed on Mahomes, but at least we got Corey Davis. We, the Titans, would have killed Mahomes' career, though. Historically, this team is a quarterback killer. So that's not something that I believe in. A lot of people used to do this when it came to John Robinson and the draft choices, and there was kind of this sentiment of, well, we suck at drafting anyway, so why does it matter if we have the picks and who we draft and what? And it's like, well, if you don't think the guy can draft, you can fire him. And then when it came to picking a quarterback last year, a lot of you guys were like, well, what gives you any faith that this coaching staff can develop a quarterback? I'm like, if you don't think the coaching staff can develop a quarterback, then you fire the coaching staff. Which, by the way, they did, and I was in favor of. So it's like, if you think, well, I mean, this team's just going to ruin the quarterback anyways because this team ruins the quarterback, it's like, well, then why do we even try? Why do we even think that, you know, why are we even Titan fans if that's the case? If this team is never going to be good, why? And you know that that's just bullcrap. So, I mean, again, the way to get better, any franchise can do this. In my lifetime of watching football, which is 1998 and on, the worst team of that tenure was probably the Cincinnati Bengals. From 1998 until, I guess maybe Cleveland, but Cincinnati, Detroit, 1998 to 2019, the Bengals were probably the worst. Should they have just given up? Should Detroit have just given up after all those years of misery post Barry Sanders? So stop with we're going to ruin quarterbacks anyways. Now, you might have ruined Mahomes because quarterback development's a big part of this. But at the same time, like, Drake May is a bona fide 1-1 level prospect. And I just don't think a lot of you understand that. More of your phone, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Twice Daily. I love talking about Twice Daily. I love the Twice Daily app. I love going to Twice Daily, and I love telling you about Twice Daily. Twice Daily has all of your cravings, and you can save on every visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, and you can enter their sweepstakes and so much more. Try their new wraps, the Italian, the ham and cheddar, the turkey and Swiss, the Nashville hot chicken. They're all made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, like your favorites. Chicken fingers, tater rounds, pretzels, boneless wings. I mean, it's just, honestly, they got everything at Twice Daily. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
I think you advocate and fight for guys when you have a really strong opinion, or there's a large difference, maybe in the positions and where you feel like, as an offensive coach or a defensive coach, you feel strongly that you might need. But it usually doesn't work that way where you're fighting for much, because you prepare, you go through all the different scenarios. You work through every, there might be 50 different scenarios that happen in front of us at pick 7. And so you have to work through all of those things, all the contingencies. What happens if this player is there? What happens if that player is there? Would we be comfortable with this player over that player? And you go through all of these exercises at your picks, and particularly as the first and second round for sure, because that's a process you have to work through, so you're not surprised on draft day. So by the time we get to the draft, all these conversations have been had. People have said their piece. We've had the conversations about who we prefer. And ultimately, when we make the decision, it'll be the Titans' decision, and everyone's going to move forward with that. So this is the time for all of those things when coaches are advocating for guys they like, scouts are advocating for the players they like. You have conversations if there's huge discrepancies in the grades, and you figure out where that difference is, and you come to consensus on whatever player you're discussing. And so the process has been fun, but it's an enjoyable process. There's a lot of conversation. This is when all the advocating happens. And then by the time we get to the draft, we've cemented our plan for the most part on what directions we'll head based on what events happen in front of us.
There you go, Brian Callahan. This is the time where you hash these things out. Again, if Drake May is available at 7, which happens if Charles Robinson's reporting is correct, and New England has J.J. McCarthy atop their board, and Drake May slides, you take him. You take him with the 7th pick if he's there, because he's a better prospect than Levis. And because Levis had Levis had an okay rookie season. That's it. The jury's out. May is an A-plus quarterback prospect. Back to your phones, which are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Brad has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Brad?
Jared, good afternoon. As an elite-level prospect with a 63.3% completion percentage his senior year, and 24 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. How much more elite are those numbers than, say, the numbers that Levis put up his junior year when he had actual competent talent around him, like Drake May's had all of his years?
Well, Levis was 22. Hey, Brad, the year you're referencing, Levis was 22, and May was 20.
Okay. So 2 years, you think he would get that much better than Levis is now?
I think that those are two very important developmental years.
Elite is a strong word for Drake May, who starts out great every year, and he is a pretty pony to look at. But his record in college with NFL level talent, you got to remember, he had Josh Downs as a receiver. He's got Tez Walker he had last year. He's got NFL linemen around him. He's got NFL capable defensive players.
Who are the NFL linemen on his team right now?
Mac Brown. And he is.
Who are the NFL linemen on his team right now?
Well, I mean, I can't go down the list and name every one of them, but I know.
We've been focused on offensive line for months
talk
in the
to
draft.
Me then about all the NFL offensive linemen that played in front of Levis when he was at Kentucky. What I'm trying to say, Jared, is they're basically the Spider-Man meme. If you put both those guys in a quarterback room, you're going to have two guys that are exactly the same thing, pointing at each other. There's just one guy that went to Carolina and was a little bit more popular and was well known by society, by the upper echelon people in football than the other. I just don't see it. I mean, his pedigree is not, to me, it's just not elite, and it's not any better. I mean, he didn't win at a place where he was always set up to win.
So you're just throwing out things like he has all these NFL linemen. Thank you, Brad. He has all these NFL linemen, and I don't know any of these NFL linemen you're talking about. And again, we've been studying the offensive linemen in the draft the last 2 years, and I can't think of one guy on the offensive line in North Carolina over the last 2 years. Ian, can you think of one guy on the offensive line from North Carolina over the last 2 years?
I don't think I've seen a single North Carolina football game in years.
I mean, I've watched Drake May play against NC State, and I think Drake May's got a lot of talent. So I'm glad you brought this up, because I think there is a big difference between the two. In Drake May's last 2 years in college, he threw for 62 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. Levis was 43 and 23. So we're talking about 19 more touchdowns and what is that, 6 less interceptions? That is a massive difference. May is also 21 years old. Levis took his first snap at UK at 22. There is a big difference between that. There's not a huge difference between 35 and 33, but there is a massive difference between 20 years old and 22. A huge difference. And you all know that because you remember what your life was like when you were 20 and when you compare it to when you're 22. But I also go back to this, what's Drake May done? So this is from the Dane Brugler's The Beast Guide at The Athletic, the one that Joe says he's not allowed to talk about on the air, but we're allowed to talk about on the air. So this was his summary on Drake May in The Beast Guide, and I also have the summary for Levis. It says, a 2-year starter at North Carolina, May thrived in Phil Longo's air raid offense and Chip Lindsey's more balanced attack in 2023. Despite only 2 years as the Tar Heel starter, they were the 2 most productive seasons by a quarterback in North Carolina history. May's 5,000 yards of total offense set a school record, and his 4,000 yards of total offense was the second most. He was the only FBS quarterback to accumulate over 9,000 yards of total offense over the last 2 seasons. With his arm strength and pacing, May put the full inventory of throws on tape and operates with a timing from the pocket to attack defense's leverage. He is a quick reaction athlete to make plays off schedules as a scrambler and can rip throws from different platforms. His arm can get juiced up at times, disrupting his ball placement, and his progression reads are still a work in progress, especially when he feels pressed to make a play. Now, that is a Levis problem. Overall, May needs to cut down on the reckless decisions, but he is a well-put-together passer on the field with command, athletic instincts, and arm talent to create solutions for problems that NFL defenses present. With his physical gifts and smarts, he is cut from the same cloth as Justin Herbert and has a similar ceiling as an NFL player. Round 1. Great. I think that's solid. When it comes to Levis, his summary was a 2-year starter at Kentucky. Levis had a promising 2021 season under Liam Cohen. However, he struggled with consistency in 2022 as the offense saw a complete makeover with Wan'Dale Robinson and multiple offensive linemen departing for the NFL and new play caller Rich Scangarello taking over for Liam Cohen, who left to become the LA Rams offensive coordinator. Physically built for the pro game, Levis is strong in the pocket and moves well for his size and has a power arm. However, defenses are too easily able to put doubt in his mind, which leads to forced or inaccurate throws because of the hesitancy in his game. Overall, Levis needs more reps to read. Carson Wentz should be considered both a positive and a negative, but he still has starter-level traits and upside. So Dane Brugler, when evaluating, says that guy's Justin Herbert, that guy's Carson Wentz, both positives and negatives. To the caller's point, I don't think you'll ever see, I don't think you'll ever see anybody say Justin Herbert and Carson Wentz looking at each other in the same quarterback room see the same person. I just don't think you'll see that. And again, it's not to say that Levis can't overcome some of the issues that are in his game. To me, I think the issues that I see with Levis are when the game starts to get out of reach. Levis feels the anxiety to make the play right there to get him back. And sometimes I think he just calm down. 7 minutes left in the game. There's still some possessions. Gotta be a little bit more efficient here, but you don't have to get it all back in one throw. And I think Levis gets hurt too much. And, those are legitimate issues. So, as far as that's concerned, I think that you guys are just, again, nobody, like these football people are not saying this. The football people that don't live here, that don't sit there and just, smell the tush of Will Levis like my puppy, tries to smell other dogs. Like, these people are like, yeah, Levis is fine. He's a good prospect. He's a solid. Drake May, again, Rick Spielman, tier 1. That's what we're talking about. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. Speaking of those tiers, I do kind of want to go over some of these tiers that Rick Spielman had because it did kind of fascinate me. And it's a little different than maybe I view the draft. And he watches a lot more of the tape and the pro days and everything else than I do. So we'll do that next. Here on our program, Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Fellas, you've put this off for way too long. It is time to get it done and move forward with your sex life, and the Tennessee Men's Clinic is the leader in bedroom confidence. The reality is pills often quit working, and guys start making excuses for not coming to bed. Did you know that studies show that men will be more irritable and argumentative before bed just to avoid failing at intimacy? And yes, I know. Many of you hate going to the doctor, but the Tennessee Men's Clinic was created in 2014 to take care of guys just like you. For a decade, the urologists and providers at the Tennessee Men's Clinic have helped guys with ED and weight loss, and they are now even offering aesthetic enhancements and cosmetic procedures. Their ED weight loss treatments truly change lives with no surgery, and they are seeing success rates as high as 90%. They specialize in seeing guys who think they're out of luck regain hope that they can be successful in the bedroom and beyond, and they even offer same-day or next-day appointments. It's time to feel amazing and hit your goals this year, so stop thinking about it and call the Tennessee Men's Clinic today. 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090, or go online to TennesseeMen'sClinic.com to book an appointment today. That's TennesseeMen'sClinic.com.
If Drake May's stock does slip and he falls to 7 to the Tennessee Titans, should the Titans take him?
100%. 100%. I'm telling you what, if his stock is slipping at the combine, I'd like to know what for. Size, athleticism, arm strength, and then the interview process. You guys, I've had, I called his first start, and I've called his, I guess it would have been his last game against NC State this past season because he didn't play in the bowl game. I had him a number of times, had him in production meetings a number of times. He's going to be super impressive in the interview process. So to me, when I hear hey, his stock is dropping, that feels like it has to be smoke screen to me. It has to be, because I've sat there and I've experienced what the interview process would seem like with him. And I don't think that there are going to be teams that walk away from interacting with him and think that guy can't be a franchise quarterback. I don't think that. That would be the most unlikely scenario that I could imagine.
I guess Tim Hasselbeck's an idiot too, Twitter. I say, hey, I would take Drake May if he falls to 7. Stillman's an idiot. Really? Because Tim Hasselbeck said the same thing, and Tim Hasselbeck has played in the NFL, and Tim Hasselbeck is a QB analyst for ESPN, and Tim Hasselbeck is a coach, and Tim Hasselbeck comes on our station every week, and he watches the Titans, and he breaks the games down, and Tim Hasselbeck calls Drake May's games and knows Drake May, but I guess he's an idiot too. Just like I'm an idiot, just like everybody that doesn't think that Will Levis is the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. Now, apparently, from the same people that used to bitch about how bad he sucked this time a year ago, apparently we're all stupid. So Rick Spielman released his tiers yesterday, the former Vikings general manager, again, the guy who, with his last first-round pick, drafted Christian Darrisaw in the first round, the same guy who, in his second-to-last first-round pick, drafted Justin Jefferson in the first round, and he released his tiers on his CBS With the First Pick podcast. Tier 1, Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. So that's the first. Drake May's in that first group. And then, of course, we talked about, remember, Neighbors and Alt. And who do you take here? He's saying that Neighbors is a different level prospect than Alt. Tier 2, Spielman has Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers, Joe Alt, Dallas Turner, Olu Fashanu. But he did specify that he thinks that Alt is a much better prospect than Fashanu. Thinks Alt has Pro Bowl potential, Fashanu has starter on a decent team potential. Tier 3, Jared Verse, Byron Murphy, Terrion Arnold, J.C. Latham, and Quinyon Mitchell. And Tier 4, Thalys Fuaga, Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Fautanu, J.J. McCarthy, and Kool-Aid McKinstry. And I find that fascinating. First of all, yesterday with all the talk about how crazy it would be to go with Brock Bowers over Joe Alt, and he on his board has Bowers ahead of Alt. Now, again, they're in the same tier. And to me, if we're picking left tackle versus tight end, that's a different story. But he's got May in a different tier than Alt. Again, you don't get better by letting other teams pick good players. But I guess he's stupid too. Dominic is stupid, remember, because of what he said about Brock Bowers. I'm stupid because of what I said about, if the guy who most people think is the second best player in this class ends up at 7, take him. I guess I'm stupid too. But the people that draft guards in the first round, those are the geniuses. Got it. One texter says, these are typical Titan fans. The same fans that think all of the problems are solved because they got what they did in free agency. These are the same people that were so excited with Young, Mariota, and Locker. It's why the non-Titan fans who live in Nashville want to rip their hair out. Well, let me just say this. I am a Titan fan. I want Will Levis to be the guy. See, I think Drake May is going to go with the second pick. I think Drake May is going to be the second quarterback off the board, and Washington will take him. And we came into the year thinking this was the Caleb Williams, Drake May draft, and I think this is going to end up being the Caleb Williams, Drake May draft. But I'm just saying, what happens if you this, if you that, as far as we're concerned with this guy or that guy and what choices you make given the crazy scenarios that may happen in the draft. I want Levis to be the guy. And I think there is a chance that Levis can be that guy. I think it's more likely than not that Levis will not be that guy. But just, again, that's the overall numbers of quarterback development. But I think Levis is smart enough to be able to do it, I think. I think Levis has the talent. I think they've got him a good coach. He's got some receivers, so maybe there's a chance this works out. But I'm not passing up on an A-plus quarterback prospect because of maybe there's a chance this works out. And somebody tweeted me, and they said, well, Jared, that's fine. It's just, if Levis isn't the guy, then take a quarterback next year. I don't even know who the quarterbacks coming out next year are. Ian, who's the top quarterback on the board next year?
Good question.
I believe the top quarterback on the board right now is Quinn Ewers out of Texas, and Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado is the second quarterback. If Shedeur Sanders becomes the quarterback of the Titans, this place is going to be a freaking zoo. But again, different discussion for a different day.
The Penn State kid, I guess, is up there too.
I think he kind of sucks.
Aller.
I think he sucks. Really?
Yeah.
So, anywho, again, I don't think any of those guys would be viewed as higher prospects than May. I think that's why Ewers went back to school, honestly, because it's like, well,
Beck
I
at
come out
Georgia.
in this class. Yeah, I don't love that guy either.
And then Riley Leonard, Notre Dame. Milrow.
Riley Leonard, so the Duke kid that got hurt and
Yep.
Was supposed to be a first-round pick, and then he wasn't. And Jalen Milrow is not an NFL quarterback. I'm sorry.
So not great.
I am sorry. One texter goes, Carolina QB history. Name another Carolina quarterback. Can't do it. Sam Howell, Mitch Trubisky. Again, those guys were viewed as, Trubisky was a high pick. Howell was a guy that people thought was going to be a good NFL. I mean, those guys have been starting NFL quarterbacks before. You can't say I can't name them, and I pulled 2 in the last decade out of my tush like that. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, what are we doing here? Oof. Unbelievable. Some of these texts, these people are. Sam says that the 2025 mock drafts have the Titans picking first and taking Shedeur Sanders. So, by the way, and I like Levis. I think there's a chance. I don't love him, and I'm not assuming that he can do things that I haven't seen him do. Now, I use that Texans game, the one where they lost to the JV team. I use that as an example of kind of the line of demarcation as to whether or not Will Levis is going to make it. And there was a play, I want to say, early in the second half where Levis rolled to the left and Traylon Burks was running wide open down the left side of the field, but Levis had already decided that he was going to throw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins was double covered. There were 2 guys, one on Burks, one on Hopkins. They both went to Hopkins. Burks is running wide open down the field, and he threw an interception on the ball to Hopkins. You remember that one, Ian?
I think so, yeah.
So what should happen here is the next time something like this happens, the game, you would hope, I hope, the game slows down for Levis so that instead of, that panic and I'm going to throw it anyways, he's learned from the mistake of, hey, calm down, slow down. Oh, use your eyes. Oh, there's the guy wide open. Throw to him. But I don't know if Levis is going to be able to do that or not. That's the question here. That's the line of demarcation. If Levis can learn from his mistakes and not throw pick sixes to dropping defensive tackles, and then when they're in the end zone, ram them with his shoulder, then you got something. If Levis is going to decide that he's going to try to helicopter every play, he's going to play 4 games a season, and he's going to get hurt. And then that does you no good. One texter says, Jared, we've all heard you complaining about not having a left tackle, Joe Alt, all the time. Now you're jumping on the Drake May bandwagon. That is pathetic. Well, I mean, the fact that Drake May is a really good prospect doesn't change the fact that the Titans don't have a tackle. But again, I've been operating under the assumption this entire draft process time, I've been operating under the assumption that Drake May will not be available with the 7th overall pick. Today, we've been discussing the scenario if Drake May is available. And those are 2 different things. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get back into your phones on this, 615-737-1025. But I do have a Predators thought I want to get in. Because I think the Predators and Predator fans are about to get porked by the NHL. I think. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company right here, 102.5-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there, this week's Nashville's best deal is Prince's Hot Chicken, the original and iconic hot chicken joint. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. The gift card is only good for the Tanger outlets in Antioch and inside Assembly Food Hall in downtown Nashville.
as a player, you know what I said? It is what it is, and this is what we're dealing with, and keep moving.
Would you, though, be, again, you're not on this team, so you're not speaking for the team, but just would it be hard mentally or physically for you to go 8 days between playing competitive hockey games?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's mentally, I think you have to stay sharp. You have to stay on top of your game, and you take 8 days off, and yeah, you can rest up. And, if you're banged up, you're like, yes, give me those 8 days. I'll gladly take those. And there's a lot of guys that are banged up, so they're going to look at it that way. But there's also, hey, I'm playing at my prime right now. I'm feeling as good as I have, and I want to keep playing, and we want to keep going, and we want to stay sharp. The real challenge comes for Bruno. He's got to come up with a practice plan. The coaches need to formulate practices that are going to mimic game speed. At the same time, they don't want to hurt people and wear them down with a full week of practice. And mentally, that can be exhausting, just showing up at the rink.
Yeah, that was Hal on our show yesterday. Hal being like, well, yeah, the season ends on Monday for the Predators, not a Thursday for everybody. But it is what it is. Okay, Hal, would it mess you up? Oh, yeah, it messed me up. So Adam Vingan sent this to me today from the Provence, the paper in Vancouver, about the potential scheduling between the Predators and the Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs. It is, Ian, would you say 99.9% Predators Vancouver?
I don't know about 99.9, but I think around 90.
Okay. So it's going to be Vancouver unless Dallas wins their, or Vancouver loses their game and Dallas wins 2 games, or some fakakta thing like that. I don't know. So anywho, this is from La Provence. A Vancouver-Nashville series is expected to have an ugly schedule, certainly in the later stages, but possibly also in the opening. As first reported by Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman and confirmed by a league source to Post Media, who owns La Provence, on Monday evening, there is a good chance the Canucks versus Predators series might not start until April 23rd. So that would be 1 week from today. So the Predators would have 8 days off. A surprising twist given the scheduling challenges created by Rogers Arena's limited availability in the first week of May. And also that the Predators are off, having finished their regular season schedule on Monday night. An April 23rd start means they would have been off for a full week, as the Canucks' final regular season game is on Thursday in Winnipeg. Starting on April 23rd would be curious because Rogers Arena has no bookings between April 20th, when the Stanley Cup playoffs begin, and April 29th, when Justin Timberlake is performing, and there is only one booking at Nashville's Bridgestone Arena next week, April 25th, for Tim McGraw. An April 20th start would have been very unfair to the Canucks, writes the paper, who closed the season on April 18th and deserved to get some rest after a strong season. That's why many speculated an April 21st start is ideal with a game 2 days later, and it is understood that April 21st or 22nd could be a possibility for Game 1. If the series were to start on April 21st or 22nd, the teams would likely travel to Nashville on the 25th before resuming play in Nashville April 26th. But a 23rd start would mean that Game 2 would either be the next night or Thursday, draft night at the latest. That would mean, the Provence writes, that games 3 and 4 would be back-to-back April 27th and 28th in Nashville. If Game 5 were necessary, they'd play at Rogers on April 30th, and no matter whether the series starts as late as April 23rd or as early as April 21st, the back end of a 7-game series is guaranteed to be ugly. Apparently, Pearl Jam is going to be at Rogers Arena, so Game 6 would be back in Nashville. No bookings at Bridgestone Arena between April 29th and May 4th. But a potential Game 7 in Vancouver would have to happen on May 3rd because Pearl Jam is booked to open their world tour at Rogers Arena on May 4th. In other words, Game 6 would be on a back-to-back either behind Game 5 or more likely on Game 2 in front of Game 7.
You can't play playoff games back-to-back.
So I talked to somebody today, like somebody who would know. Because I go, that is preposterous.
Has that ever happened?
Well, I just think it's preposterous to play Game 6 on a back-to-back, especially Nashville and Vancouver. Like, how do you get your local media to the game for something like that?
Yeah, that'd be the turnaround on that. It's ridiculous.
It would be preposterous to play a game at Bridgestone Arena for Game 6, and then the next day Like after the game's over at 11 o'clock at night, because again, you're in the Western Conference, so all these games are going to start at 8:30. Then you're going to fly at 11 o'clock. No. The game's over at 11. You're going to get everybody on the plane. You're going to take off at like 1. It's a 5-hour flight. You're going to get in there at 6 a.m. and you're going to play the next night? How does that is preposterous. And the idea, Vancouver's season ends on the 18th, and it would be unfair for them to have to play on the 20th or 21st. Well, I think it's unfair that the Predators have to wait an entire week and a half in order to play game 1. But guess what I think's going to happen? Even though somebody told me, they were like, look, man, there's not going to be a back-to-back for game 7. Like, there's not going to be a back-to-back. Here's what I think's going to happen. If the NHL has 2 choices, like a fork in the road, choice 1 is screw Vancouver or screw the Predators, they're going to screw the Predators. I'm just telling you that right now. That is the choice that's going to be made. Why? Because we ain't a Canadian hockey market. That's why. So when Barry comes on the show, I'm going to ask Barry about, are you already talking to the league about this? Because if I'm Barry Trotz, two things I don't want to do. I don't want to play on Tuesday to open the series. My guys don't need 8 days off. If I could play on Sunday, that would give us, 6 days off, 7 days, 6 days off, which I still don't like, but that's much easier to manage. The compromise might be Monday. The other thing is, I don't think that it would be a good idea for them to play the night of the NFL draft. And I think there are just certain cities where the NHL should not play playoff games. You got Montreal playing somebody, play. Whatever, who cares in Montreal about the NFL draft? But there are certain cities where I don't think you can play a hockey game the night of the NFL draft. You can probably play it, at that late slot, after all that's done or something. But I'm just telling you, my focus will not be on game 1 of the playoffs or game 2 of the playoffs if it's the night of the NFL draft. It just won't be. That's why, I kind of hope it's Dallas for another reason, because then, we get the NFL draft. They will not play a hockey game when Dallas and Nashville are playing the night of the NFL draft. But I just think that first of all, the idea of back-to-backs at the end of the series and elimination games is preposterous.
Back-to-back in the playoffs in general is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous in general, but if it has to happen because you're building book too many dates, that's one thing.
Yeah,
but
I mean, if it's for
New an
Jersey,
elimination game?
Or New Jersey versus the Islanders, super close, Washington, Pittsburgh, you don't have to really travel. Sure, plus, maybe I could buy it.
Some of these, and again, David Kell's over at Bridgestone. He's a wizard at how they do all this stuff. But in theory, what they could do is they could play, if it's a weekend, they could play the game at 1 o'clock or something like that and then turn it over for the concert or whatever it may be. But I'm just telling you, my gut tells me that if the NHL has the choice of screwing the Predators or screwing the Canucks, they're going to pick screwing the Predators. And they'll make some kind of bullcrap reason up. Maybe it's, they're the number 1 seed and they deserve it. They won their division. But I think in reality it's just because that's Canadian market, and they're going to protect the Canadian markets at all costs. Because that's where they're going to make a boatload of money. Not that they don't make money here. I mean, they make a lot of money here. But that's the gut I get. And the reason why is because I think it is ridiculous. If their last game is the 18th, they can play the 21st. They can play the 21st. Well, it would be unfair to the Canucks for them they can play. You play the 18th, you're off the 19th, you're off the 20th, you can play the 21st. But instead, Elliott says they're going to play the 23rd. And Elliott's not hearing that from nobody. I mean, Elliott's hearing that from somebody whose opinion matters. So I think the Predators are going to get screwed. I think it is coming. One texter says you're a professional hockey team. You do whatever you have to do. I'm like, you're not going to play back-to-backs in a Game 7 in the playoffs with a Nashville to Vancouver flight. You wouldn't do it in baseball. You wouldn't do it in basketball. You wouldn't do it in football. You're not going to do it in hockey. And again, the other thing, too, you're trying to grow your sport. There is no way that you can fly the Canadian media and Alex Doherty from Nashville to Vancouver commercially. These guys don't fly with the team. There's no way you could do that commercially and have people there to cover the game. And they're not going to do that where people aren't there to cover the game. But that's what La Provence says. By the way, Vingan says that it's not a Canadian paper, or it's not a French paper. That's Montreal that does that. Whatever.
Yeah, they don't really do French-Canadian in Vancouver.
Vancouver is a freaking nice city. I went once like 10 years ago. It is a freaking beautiful city. I would love to go to Vancouver to watch Predators play. It's just, getting there is just a pain in the ass. All right, 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we've always talked about this Chase Sewell debate, right? And that the Titans might have a similar Neighbors, Alt, Harrison, Alt, Bowers, Alt. They may have a similar debate on their hands. But was Brian Callahan's opinion the right opinion? We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Trevor in 30 minutes, and we will ask Trevor about, hey, if Drake May slides, would you take him? Or would you keep Levis and take somebody else? We'll see what Trevor has to say. And then Barry Trotz will join us in less than an hour. We'll get his thoughts on, the schedule, the playoffs, everything else. But I keep thinking about the discussion I had with Brian Callahan the day after he was hired, in which I asked him the question about Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell, and that's where the whole elite touchdown scorer, elite non-touchdown scorer, where that whole thing came about. And it's like, okay, if the Titans find themselves in a similar situation, if Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Brock Bowers versus Joe Alt's there, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? And again, he's not going to tell us what he wants to do now, so we have to take about what he said in the past, and we have to analyze that and decide, okay, is this going to be a similar situation? So Brian Callahan did say on this show exactly why he, in the debate they had in Cincinnati, was pro Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell.
In that debate, the Sewell-Chase debate, which was, again, two players that you knew, whichever one we take is probably going to be a 10-time Pro Bowler, first-team All-Pro style player. Mm-hmm. And Penei was fantastic, and we loved him. And Jamar was fantastic, and we loved him. And the debate went back and forth, and which one do we need? And I landed on the Jamar Chase side because I saw what he could do for our offense. The difference there to me is like Jamar was an elite player. And in that moment for our team in Cincinnati, the elite player that can score touchdowns versus the elite player that can protect the quarterback with the style of quarterback that we had and the style of offense that we ran, we took the guy that could score touchdowns.
Okay. Saying, hey, that was in that moment the reason why. Can I ask whether or not that was actually the right decision? I mean, Jamar Chase is a great player, but so is Penei Sewell. Penei Sewell might actually be the best offensive lineman in the NFL. And then you have to wonder, okay, what's happened to the teams since those decisions were made? Cincinnati drafted Jamar Chase. They went to the Super Bowl, and they've been a contender ever since. But the thing that's held Cincinnati back is undoubtedly their offensive line. They've spent so much money in free agency, whether it's Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, Orlando Brown Jr., La'el Collins. They've spent a lot of money. And it might be the one thing that's holding them back from the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, Detroit, in that same draft, after taking Penei Sewell, was able to draft Amon-Ra St. Brown. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is a legitimate number one receiver. There's no doubt, if we compare the two sides, Cincinnati, Jamar Chase, and their tackle in the second round, Jackson Carman, who has played in 22 career games with 6 starts at guard, Detroit actually comes out ahead, right? And so then I thought to myself, okay, well, that's easy to say. Well, they got the receiver in round 4, and, look, that's it. That would almost be cherry picking, right? When Detroit took Penei Sewell, they didn't know they were going to get Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they didn't know Amon-Ra St. Brown was going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. But then I look at the draft and say, okay, what was the depth of that draft? Because we talk about this all the time. Well, if you take the guy here and then you can take the other guy later, and, this is a deep tackle draft, and this is a. So I looked up the 2021 draft. In that, the second round, the first round had Rashawn Slater, a Pro Bowler, Penei Sewell, a Pro Bowler, and Christian Darrisaw, a first-round tackle who has been very good. Now, there was Alex Leatherwood, that John Gruden pick that ended up being a guard, but I guess he was a tackle at Alabama or was supposed to be a tackle in the NFL, and he was a bust. But 3 first-round tackles there, 3 starters, or 4 first-round tackles, 3 starters. After that, there were 3 second-round tackles that were taken. 5 if you count 2 guys, Tevin Jenkins and Liam Eichenberg, who have been converted to guard under the second coaching staffs. And again, guard is different than tackle. Tackle, premium position. So Cincinnati goes Jamar Chase in round 1. And in the same draft, the second-round tackles were Jackson Carman, again, 6 starts over 3 years, all of those at guard. Walker Little has made 17 starts over 3 years at Jacksonville. And Dylan Radence has made 16 starts in 3 years. So after those first-round tackles, there was nobody in that 2021 class. The receivers that were after round 1 in the 21 class include Nico Collins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rondale Moore, Josh Palmer, and Terrence Marshall Jr., all of whom have 1 season listed as an NFL starter. Which takes me back to the original question. Was that the right opinion? It's hard to argue with Cincinnati's results saying, okay, since they made that choice, they've been to 1 Super Bowl, 2 AFC championship games, and last year Joe Burrow got hurt, and it wasn't really a protection injury as much as it was just a freak injury, the wrist hit the turf, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, I can argue the one thing that has held Cincinnati back is their offensive line. If they had drafted Sewell with Joe Burrow, a force multiplier at quarterback, with T. Higgins already at wide receiver, could they not have drafted a Nico Collins, drafted an Amon-Ra St. Brown, drafted a Josh Palmer, and put that guy with Higgins and Boyd and Burrow and still have been successful with Penei Sewell at right tackle or left tackle and thus protecting Joe Burrow? And I don't know the answer to the question here. Because if normally when guys get jobs, they do what they did at their past job. Nobody wants to be this guy, but we all know this guy. Somebody gets hired into their organization, and he sits there and he goes, well, when I was at Cincinnati, what we did. And I don't know if Brian Callahan's that guy or not. But for as much as we've made about, hey, elite touchdown scorer, Malik Neighbors, elite touchdown scorer. Brock Bowers, elite touchdown scorer. As much as we've made about that, I think there's a very strong argument to be made that Cincinnati made the wrong decision. And it's hard to say that when they've gone out and had success and gone to the Super Bowl and Jamar Chase is awesome. But that was a much deeper receiver draft than it was a tackle draft. And the fact that they had offensive line problems, go back to that last play of the Super Bowl, Jamar Chase is wide open. And it doesn't matter because Aaron Donald is eating Joe Burrow for lunch. So just keep that in mind when we have that elite touchdown scorer versus elite non-touchdown scorer. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025, and we will get to some of your phones. Plus, I did a little homework assignment about if you don't take Joe Alt in the first round. We'll get to that coming up next here on our program. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. That's right. Smile and save this month with Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Because from now until April 30th, you can take advantage of big savings on home systems. Enjoy up to $1,500 off select new HVAC systems, whole home water filtration and descalers, or select new whole home generators. And if you've been waiting for the right time to upgrade or replace your systems, now's the time to do it. Visit happyhiller.com today for all the details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been taking great care of my home for years. They can do the same for you. That's Hiller, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
This is a crapshoot at best. I've said from 20 years ago, the best of us bat about 550 in the draft. You know, the guys that are in the Hall of Fame bat about 550 in the draft over time.
Wow.
And so there are no sure shots. None. Even Peyton Manning was not a sure shot. You know, there aren't that many. And certainly guys that are going to change a team or be game changers, or all of the adjectives that are used to describe these guys are just nonsense. We don't know if they can play. We'll find out 3 years from now.
There you go. That was Bill Polian on SiriusXM NFL Radio. So we're talking again about, hey, you know, the elite touchdown scorer, the elite non-touchdown scorer. Maybe Cincinnati didn't make the right call because Jackson Carman, their second-round pick as a tackle, was a bust. But I went back and did a homework assignment today of the 3 drafts, 2020, 2021, 2022. How many tackles were selected that have become starters in the first round, and how many have become starters that were picked in later rounds? I felt, Ian, like the 2023 draft was too early to tell.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
So I went 2020, 2021, 2022, and it all happens to fit into the new this current collective bargaining agreement.
Cool.
Because rules change, things like that. So in 2020, there were 5 tackles taken in the first round. 4 of them had at least 1 season as a starter. Isaiah Wilson was the one who did not. He was a bust. Andrew Thomas, the Giants, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, and Tristan Wirfs. And by the way, Tristan Wirfs has been to 3 Pro Bowls. So 4 tackles were taken in 2020 that became starters in the first round. 1 starter outside of the first round. San Francisco took Colton McKivitz in the 5th round at 153, and he was a starter for 1 year last year. Before that, it was Mike McGlinchey, who was taken 8th overall. But McGlinchey left as a free agent, and Colton McKivitz, in his 4th year in the league, became the starter at right tackle. So there's 1 for 1 season. 2021, 3 starting tackles. Rashawn Slater, Penei Sewell, Christian Darrisaw, all taken in the first round. 2022, now this is where it gets fascinating. 2022 saw Ike Ekwonu, Evan Neal, Charles Cross, and Trevor Penning all drafted in the first round. All currently are listed as starters for their teams. The reason I say currently is because Ekwonu might be a bust, Neal might be a bust, and Penning might be a bust. Charles Cross is legit. But as of right now, they're starters, and they've all started in the NFL. However, in 2022, Nicholas Petit-Ferrer started 1 season, 2022. He was taken in the 3rd round at 69. Braxton Jones was drafted 168 in the 5th round. He has been a 2-year starter as the left tackle of the Chicago Bears. So that is a real legitimate starter right there. Jamal Slayer was a 6th round pick at 195 to the Chargers. He played left tackle in 2022. I guess Slater got hurt. He played left tackle in 2022 and kicked inside to left guard in 2023. But if you can play left tackle for an entire season and then they keep you around to start, that's good enough for me. He counts as a starter. Bernard Raymond has started 2 seasons in Indianapolis. He was taken in the 3rd round at 77 overall. And Zach Tom, and he might be the best of this group. Zach Tom was taken in the 4th round at 140. He was a backup his rookie year, but he was the right tackle of the Green Bay Packers in 2023. So in 2022, 4 first-round tackles that have been starters, but they may not be very good, and then 5 guys who have started at least a little bit that weren't taken in the first round. But again, the guys we're talking about here, the only guy that we know on this list that we're talking about, and we're like, yeah, he's a starter, is Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
And he sucks. So keep that in mind. So the math says if you decide not to take Joe Alt, you decide that you want to go tackle in the 2nd round, over those 3 drafts, you've got a 35% chance of that guy being a starter compared to 11 of the starters coming in the first round. 11 starters in the first round, 6 starters outside the first round over those 3 years. 3 Pro Bowlers, Wirfs, Slater, and Sewell, all taken in the first round. So keep that in mind. And I know you guys think Bill Callahan is a wizard. Remember, Jedrick Wills, first-round pick, they didn't wait until the 8th round. The right tackle there, Jack Conklin, they didn't wait. That was a day one free agent signing for a boatload of money. So if you really want a starting tackle, now you could sign Andrus Peat, but if you really want a starting tackle, you probably have to take him in the first round. That being said, I'm sure people are going to say, well, you said Drake May. Right. Quarterback is different. If I can get an elite quarterback, and this guy's an elite prospect at quarterback, I'm going to do it. But, again, as easy as it is to say, well, Malik Neighbors is an elite touchdown scorer, Brock Bowers is an elite touchdown scorer. At the same time, Detroit got their elite tackle, and then they found Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round. None of these guys, I'm sorry, Zach Tom, Braxton Jones, PT, none of these guys are the Amon-Ra St. Brown at tackle. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, you have to think about the body and brain damage that Joe Burrow has taken from no protection. I actually think Joe Burrow will be okay, but I hear what you're saying. That would worry me. Another texter says there's no way Levis could take the beating that Joe Burrow has taken because of that offensive line. And I tend to agree with that. I don't know if Will Levis is injury prone because Will Levis had terrible protection his last year at Kentucky and got injured, and had terrible protection last year and got injured. But the reality is he's been a starter for 3 years of his life, and in 2 of them he's gotten injured. That is a concern. And, again, it's chicken or the egg here, right? Is Levis actually injury prone, or is Levis injury prone because he's had no lines from what's in front of him? Keith in Bowling Green says, games are won in the trenches. Tell that to your coach. Because, again, your coach said in this particular case of Chase and Sewell, we decided to go Chase for the elite touchdown scorer because Jamar Chase can make things happen. And so you don't need to tell that to me. You got to tell that to your coach. Because your coach argued against it in Cincinnati. One texter says, Zach Tom was taken in the 4th round. Yes, Chuck, that was mentioned here in the breakdown of guys that were drafted. In fact, I think of all these guys, Zach Tom might be the only real starter. Colton McKivitz started last year, but that was out of necessity. This was the same team that started Daniel Brunskill, I believe, at tackle at one point. I think that, again, you're running a risk if you think you can wait to the 2nd round, the 3rd round. This is why I keep telling people when it comes to trade back, take Amarius Mims, all that. Guys, if you are a left tackle, and this is, again, why I'm pumping Alt up here, but, if you are a left tackle that can play in the NFL the day that you leave college, you are taken by the 14th pick. You are not lasting until the middle of the 1st round because those guys are so rare. I mean, that's just Dustin from Hopkinsville, Kentucky says, never strap yourself to picking because of need. Cincinnati needed linemen. They picked a wide receiver, went to the Super Bowl. The talent overcame the need. Levis having people to throw to that can get open quick, catch well, get the ball out of his hands faster. That would allow you to find out who he really is this year. And you can't get much better at blindside without using the 7th pick, though it doesn't have to be Alt. The franchises that play it safe rarely see the promised land. Well, again, Detroit was the team that ended up with Penei Sewell, and I'd say Detroit is pretty freaking good if their coach could just pull his head out of his ass for 5 minutes, which I don't think he'll ever do. All right, Trevor joins us next. We got the Brock Bowers stuff to get into with Trevor from yesterday, Mark Dominic. We've got the Drake May stuff, the scenarios. What does Trevor think? Because, again, Tim Hasselbeck says if Drake May falls, you take him. And I agree with Hasselbeck, and you all, yeah, you're an idiot. Let's see what Trevor says. And we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5-1063 The Game. And join the Nashville Super Speedway in the city of Lebanon for Speedway on the Square this Saturday, April 20th from 1 to 6 in downtown Lebanon. Stop by and bring the family for a day filled with inflatables, face painting, balloon art, live music, and a ticket giveaway to the Ally 400 NASCAR Cup Series race at 3:30 p.m. Also, tune in to 102.5-1063 The Game today as Vandy Baseball takes on Lipscomb. Pregame at 5:45, first pitch at 6. Vandy Baseball is brought to you by Smoky Mountain Tops, your countertop experts. Visit SmokyMountainTops.com.
If Drake May's stock does slip and he falls to 7 to the Tennessee Titans, should the Titans take him?
100%. 100%. I'm telling you what, if his stock is slipping at the combine, I'd like to know what for. Size, athleticism, arm strength, and then the interview process. You guys, I've had I called his first start, and I've called I guess it would have been his last game against NC State this past season because he didn't play in the bowl game. I had him a number of times, had him in production meetings a number of times. He's going to be super impressive in the interview process. So to me, when I hear hey, his stock is dropping, that feels like it has to be smokescreen to me. It has to be, because I've sat there and I've experienced what the interview process would seem like with him. And I don't think that there are going to be teams that walk away from interacting with him and think that guy can't be a franchise quarterback. I don't think that. That would be the most unlikely scenario that I could imagine.
Okay, that was Tim Hasselbeck on with the Midday Show. And you heard Caroline say if he falls to 7, and Hasselbeck just immediately goes, take him. Take him. This is where we go over the scenario so that on draft night, just like the team, whenever something happens, we're not shocked by it and we're prepared. Okay, what do you do here? Trevor Matage joins us on the program. I, for one, agree with Tim Hasselbeck that if Drake May falls to 7, and there's some chatter that, New England likes J.J. McCarthy, and then the two teams, the Chargers and Arizona, won't want to trade because they'll want Marvin and Malik Neighbors. And somehow, if he's there at 7, Trevor, I would take Drake May and turn around and trade Will Levis, knowing that I won't get, the full value probably for Levis. I would do it for the younger prospect, 21 years old. I think he's a better prospect and a better player than Levis. I would do it 5 years as compared to the 3 years left on Levis's rookie deal. Trevor, what would you do?
I would not take him. I would still take Joe Alt if it's between those two. Now, I have tremendous respect for Tim Hasselbeck. He played the position in college and in the NFL. He's one of the best analysts out there for college and NFL football. I've got great respect for him. And I've got to say that I just see this differently. And the reason I see it differently is twofold. One is that I don't see Drake May as a lock to make it. I think he's got great upside, but when you look at quarterbacks in the draft, you are about a 50-50 crapshoot, essentially, for whether or not they're going to be great even when they're taken high in the first round. Let's just go back to 2021, just a couple of years ago. 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round. So Trevor Lawrence was one of them. What do you think of Trevor Lawrence right now, having seen him for several years in the league, Jared?
I think he's fine.
He's fine. But he's the number 1 pick in the draft. Number 2 pick was quarterback Zach Wilson.
Sure, all the other guys sucked.
BYU. Right. Trey Lance is no longer with the 49ers. They moved up to get him, and they shipped him off to the Cowboys. They gave up on him. Justin Fields for the Bears is still a work in progress, and the jury is still out. Mac Jones went in the first round, 15th pick to the Patriots, and the Patriots gave up on him. So really only 2 of those 5 are even with this team that drafted them. So what I'm saying is that every one of them was super excited that they drafted their quarterback of the future. And already from the 2021 draft, the first season was 2022, 2 years ago. 3 of them aren't even with their team anymore because they gave up on him. Kenny Pickett was 2 years ago, I think, Pittsburgh. He's not with his team, first-round quarterback. They were excited that he would be the quarterback of the future for the Steelers. Well, they gave up on him and shipped him out. So what I'm saying is it's about a 50-50 chance that you're going to have your quarterback of the future. So that's one reason that I am a little careful about, giving up too much to go up high and draft a quarterback. He might be Patrick Mahomes, but then again, he might be Mac Jones.
So nothing that you've said, though, everything that you've said is just generically about quarterbacks. Nothing you've said is
right,
about
but
May.
let me get specific, though. Yeah, but let me get specific now, okay? Now, once again, Tim Hasselbeck and others that I have heard put Drake May in the top tier. Great. I totally agree. But there's a couple things that give me pause as to whether or not he's got a better chance than average of being in that 50% that is your franchise quarterback for the next 10 years. When you looked at him this last year, and really the year before too, but especially in 2023 at North Carolina, he made some amazing throws. but he also made a lot of head scratchers. I mean, on crossing routes, he would slow down receivers that were running wide open across the field. They had to slow down or even stop to catch the ball. And instead of getting lots of yards after the catch, that allowed defenders to catch up to him and take him down right there. You know, he had issues with accuracy relative to that. And that's kind of a head scratcher because it led to a lot of interceptions, not where, you know, he was trying to make something happen because his receivers weren't as good this last year as they were the year before. But it's just like, okay, that was pretty much a lousy throw. Against pressure, he seemed to be degraded, at least as I watched him, more than I thought he should have been, given his natural talent. You know, he tackled a lot of his receivers. He'd throw the ball, especially on intermediate routes, into the ground, and a receiver that could catch it and run instead went to the ground trying to catch the ball. I mean, he got a completion and a tackle on the same play. And so I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. He's an outstanding quarterback with great potential. But I don't see him as a lock. And because of that, if Joe Alt is there, you've got a much better chance of having a guy like Alt at that position be your pillar for 10 years than you would in taking a quarterback like Drake May that might be a great franchise guy and might be a bust, just like those 3 guys of the 5 first-rounders in the 2021 draft.
Okay, so just quickly, though, let's say Caleb Williams falls to 7. Would you take Caleb Williams?
I think Caleb Williams is a better risk. I would be likely to take Caleb Williams. His upside is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's why he's the number 1 quarterback, because he does stuff that very few people can do that Patrick Mahomes does in his sleep. If Williams was down there, I think I'd take that risk with him.
Okay. I was wondering if it was just your anti-first-round quarterback bias or if it was specific to this. But then here's my next question. Trevor Matage is with us. By the way, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. If you had to bet your career, because that's what these GMs are doing, if you had to bet your career just straight up on Drake May or Will Levis, who would you put it on?
Straight up, I would probably roll the dice with Drake May. But Levis has something that May doesn't, and that is he has a rookie season in the NFL playing behind an offensive line that was historically awful. I mean, last year's Titans offensive line as a group should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame as one of the worst that's ever played as a group. It was just terrible. And he didn't have a very good receiving core, and yet I thought that Levis, showed a lot of courage, moxie. He showed the ability to learn from a mistake and not make that mistake over and over and over again. He kept looking downfield when the pocket was collapsing around him. Now, I'm not talking about blitzes and stuff. I'm just talking about a 4-man rush. And he showed a lot of things that I thought were good that Drake May hasn't had a chance to show yet because he hasn't played in the NFL yet. So having said that, if I am that GM, Jared, I'm looking at the math like this. I don't see or say Joe Alt and Levis. So to me, it's a package deal with the other stuff that you would be giving up. And I would rather go right now based on what I know, which, by the way, Tim Hasselbeck disagrees with me. And he is a much better quarterback guru than I can ever be. This is just what I see. I would much rather go with Joe Alt and Levis right now than I would with Drake May and whoever I could get from a trade of Levis.
So Rick Spielman, the former Vikings general manager, is on SiriusXM NFL Radio, and he's got a podcast with CBS, and he put out his tiers. And in tier 1, he does have Drake May, along with Caleb Williams, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Jaden Daniels, and has Joe Alt in tier 2 behind Roma Dunze and Brock Bowers. I do wonder what you make of that, of, again, a former GM like Rick Spielman saying, okay, May is a first-level talent, a tier 1 talent, and Alt's not, because, Trevor, I was under the impression that Alt was as good of a talent as you could be coming out in the draft.
I think he's as good of a prospect as you could be coming out in the draft, and that's a little bit different. Alt is so smooth. His technique is so advanced for a college left tackle that he projects to step in as a starter and not have the huge learning curve to the degree that a lot of others would have. Olu Fashanu, who I really like, the left tackle out of Penn State, has a lot to learn because his technique is kind of awful. At the right side, J.C. Latham out of Alabama, who some people have rated even higher than Joe Alt, he has a whole lot to improve in his technique, especially in pass protection. Joe Alt doesn't have a whole lot to improve. He's fine-tuning. So the prospect as opposed to the talent, I think, can be two different things. And when you look at, what Stillman said about Drake May being in the top tier, once again, he's a general manager. I have never been a general manager. So you've got to take what I say and how I back it up and then apply your own research to it. As listeners, this is what you should be doing. So I'm not saying Spielman is wrong. I'm saying that I'm not nearly as confident that Drake May is going to hit when he gets to the NFL. Is he a top-level quarterback coming out? You can make that case. You can absolutely make that case. But the floor is what worries me, and what you would be giving up if you abandon Levis, trade him, don't have Joe Alt, and you put the Drake May in there. Yeah, he might be great. Might not be great. I don't know. I don't know about Levis either. But I'm very confident that Joe Alt is going to be a solid player for a long time.
Trevor is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. We will get to the Mark Dominic take of Brock Bowers over Joe Alt at 7. We'll do that next. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook, my official sportsbook app. Bet the NBA play-in tournament with a no-sweat same-game parlay from FanDuel. It doesn't matter if you're new to FanDuel. If you already have an account, you'll get bonus bets back if your same-game parlay does not win on any Tuesday night matchup. NBA same-game parlays are the perfect way to combine your bets for a chance to score an even bigger payday. However you want, just go to FanDuel.com/JGM to bet the NBA with a no-sweat same-game parlay. That's FanDuel.com/JGM and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA and my official sportsbook app. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. Minimum 3-leg parlay required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Max refund $5 unless otherwise specified. Restrictions do apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline at 1-800-889-9789.
If Brock is there, I think that's too easy of a pick. If not, it feels like it's an offensive tackle. Could they take another pass rusher type of guy? Sure. But my gut instinct is that they want to make sure they secure the offensive line. They did what you said, right? You get a pass-catching running back on Tony Pollard. You got Tyjae Spears, who obviously can catch the ball well at the backfield. Those two will hopefully complement each other and work really well. But then they also said, hey, look, we're going to solidify our wide receiver room with Treylon Burks, but Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. We've got three guys, three horses, so we don't have to take a wide receiver, in the first round. We feel really good. So it goes back down to me. It's the three choices. It's if the tight end's there, I think it's a Stockton to Malone. I think it's a slam dunk. But if the tight end's not there, I think it's offensive tackle. And then if it's not, if for whatever reason they like only one of them and that player's off the board, I think that they might be the first team to take the defensive, take Dallas Turner.
Okay, that was Mark Dominic on SiriusXM NFL Radio. Trevor Matage with us, presented by ESPN Bet Sportsbook and Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Dominic says it's a slam dunk if Brock Bowers is there at 7 to take him. I even texted Dominic, Trevor, and I said, you take him over Joe Alt. He said he would. Your thoughts?
Well, with this team right now, I would, unless they have Bowers graded significantly higher than Alt, and maybe they do. The thing about Bowers is that he is a matchup nightmare for defenses, and he is very advanced in everything there is for a tight end to be advanced. In other words, some of the top receivers coming out, they do one thing really well. Usually it's speed, but other things they're not so great. Usually that's route precision. But Bowers can do all those things at Georgia over the last 2 years. He played banged up, especially this past season, with a wide receiver core around him that wasn't great, in part because of injuries in the wide receiver core, which meant that opposing defenses were focused on him first, and yet they could not stop him. And so he's the kind of a guy that, with especially good receivers around him, so the defense can't just focus on him only, he'll be a force multiplier for a lot of reasons. I mean, he can line up as an inline tight end. You can put him out at wide receiver. You can put him in the backfield. There's lots of things. You can hand the ball to him. You can line him up at running back, and he'd be very effective. So these are all things that are great about him. It's just that with this team, if they have if they've got the grades relatively similar between Bowers and Alt, and if they're both available, I'm going with Alt, because this team has been for several years now in offensive line wasteland, and they have got to get that squared away or their receivers aren't going to help much.
Is there any player in this draft that you would take at 7 over Joe Alt if, for instance, Marvin Harrison, Malik Davis? Is there any player for the Titans specifically that you would take over Joe Alt?
I would take Caleb Williams. I would consider Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze and Marvin Harrison, the three, what I consider to be the three top receivers. I would consider them. But again, if the grades are similar, then no. And again, when I say the grades, this really comes down to what the Titans have on their board. Mm-hmm. If they've got Marvin Harrison, let's say, receiver out of Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr., if they've got him significantly higher graded than Alt, and he falls down to 7 for whatever reason, let's say J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan, somebody snatches him up in the top 7, and that pushes Harrison down, then you've really got to make that consideration. But see, I think with Brian Callahan as the head coach for the Titans, he had this issue with the Bengals when he was there, when they could have taken Jamar Chase, great receiver, or Penei Sewell, great offensive lineman, left tackle. And they ended up going with Jamar Chase, the great playmaker, the touchdown scorer. And you can't say that he was wrong, because Chase has become one of the best, most dynamic weapons in the NFL. But at the same time, behind a bad offensive line, Joe Burrow, the quarterback for Cincinnati, has had to protect himself by getting the ball out of his hands much more quickly than anybody would want, and still he wasn't protected all that well. You know, the injuries that he's had haven't always been because of the offensive line, but he's been banged up back there because of a bad offensive line. And those great receivers have not been as effective as they could be if Burrow had time in the pocket rather than just having to get the ball out quickly. And so I think having had that experience, you know, it'll be interesting to see what Coach Callahan does if he has the opportunity to go with what is a potentially great offensive tackle or potentially a great receiver. Would he do it again and take the receiver and try to build up that offensive line over time? My guess is that he would go the opposite direction this time around.
Trevor Matage is with us. Let's say that Joe Alt, I have dismissed the idea of the Chargers taking Joe Alt at 5. You have not. Charles Davis has not. A lot of people have not dismissed that idea. Let's say Alt goes off the board at 5. I mean, at that point, do the Titans still have to take a tackle in the first round because who's at tackle? Or then would you rather have a Bowers and a Dunze, a Neighbors, that kind of player than, say, dropping back and taking Thalys Fuaga or J.C. Latham or one of those kind of guys? Because somebody's got to play tackle, Trevor.
Yeah, they do. And, and I like J.C. Latham as a right tackle for this team. I think that once he gets coached up on his pass sets and things like that, he'll just be a devastating road grader. He'll be a Jack Conklin kind of guy, maybe even a better run blocker. And I think that would be a good risk. At the same time, what they may end up doing if Chargers do take Joe Alt at number 5, that's going to push other players down one. And that makes trade up opportunities for teams below the Titans much more intriguing, especially if a guy like a Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina, is one of those people that now gets pushed down. And somebody like Denver or Minnesota that's looking for a quarterback would want to trade up. Now you've got to think about what you want to do, because trading down at that point is a reasonable consideration. They should be able to get, is with in the second round, high in the second round with that 37th pick, they should be able to get a right or a left tackle that will dramatically upgrade that position for them this year. The question is, will they get a starter or will they get an elite playmaking blocker? And that's what they would get if they get a Joe Alt at number 7. If he's not available, then they've got to make the decision if they want to trade back a little bit and maybe get an offensive lineman later in the first round or even in the second round at that point.
Well, would you do that? I mean, like, let's say, I'm convinced there's 8 elite players in this draft, right? The 3 quarterbacks, the 2 receivers, Neighbors and Harrison, Bowers, Alt, and Dallas Turner. If I trade down, I'm not going to get one of those elite players. And it's like, is it worth the trade back? Like, is it worth the trade back to miss out on one of the elite players to get a tackle?
If Joe Alt is not there,
yes,
then I think it's worth the consideration. It's also worth the consideration at that point to take one of those players that got pushed down because Alt unexpectedly went up at number 5, even if that happens to be one of those receivers now. Again, you come back to where the grading is, and you may have to decide, look, if the guy we think is going to be our rock for 10 years at left tackle isn't there, so we're going to have to take a guy that we're going to know needs more development over time to get to be a solid player, well, then maybe we do take that elite touchdown scorer because we're going to have to develop that left tackle anyhow, right? And so you've got depth at receiver and depth at tackle in this draft that gives you options like that. The reason Alt is being talked about as the guy to be targeted is because his floor is the highest. His ceiling is probably not much higher than some of the other tackles in this draft, but his floor is the highest, meaning that he is the best risk that he will pan out to be a good to outstanding left tackle right out of the gate. Everybody else is going to need some work in order to get to that point. And so this is where if Alt is not there, you've got to decide what kind of risk you want to take and how much development you think you can do to a player that needs that development to get to a point to where he's worthy of the pick.
Trevor Matage is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters, and by ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Trevor, great stuff. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Matage. I mean, we try to pack as much info there as possible. The Predators are headed to the playoffs. When are they going to play? We don't know. Who are they going to play? We think Vancouver, but we don't know. Barry Trotz joins us next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. The Predators finish with 99 points on the season. I don't know why. Last night, I just wanted to get to 100. I don't know why. I'm not sure it really affects my day at all. If they were 100 or not, they would have been the number one wild card no matter what had happened. But the season is effectively over, and now we wait. And Barry Trotz joins us on the program presented by Gary Force Acura. First off, Barry, congratulations. I don't know why I wanted to get to 100 so bad last night, but for some reason I did. But congratulations on 1-for-1 on making the playoffs in your tenure as general manager.
Well, I appreciate that. I think I'm like you. I think 100 is a nice number. I think we all would have liked to get it, but at the same time, we ended up in the same spot with the LA loss last night, so it is all good. I thought last night you saw a very desperate Penguins team with some of their superstars leading the way, so I think it was good for us to see that up front and personal early as we head to the playoffs. It'll be that intensity and that urgency on a nightly basis.
Barry, I hate the fact the way the schedule played out, that you guys are going to have basically, either an entire week or maybe even longer than a week or maybe a little shorter than a week before you're ready for the playoffs. But you've done this many different times as a coach. How much does it matter that you guys will have an extended break, whereas Vancouver, for instance, is going to be playing on Thursday?
Well, from our standpoint, the break is something that we're just going to have to deal with. I like our team's good with rhythm. You saw that in the long streak. We're playing every second night, and when you get in a good rhythm, it just keeps feeding. So I think from that standpoint, we're just going to have to deal with it. It's our first goal is to make the playoffs, and the second one is to grow in the playoffs to become a better team every game, and I think we'll deal with it the way we have. We've got a lot of really professional guys. They're good leadership, so we're just going to have to deal with it, and we're going to have to get prepared, and we'll be ready whatever our opponent throws at us.
What do you think the plan is going to be as far as, making sure that this team gets a little bit of rest, but also does have some intensive practices while not being able, for instance, to actually play a game where Jeremy Lauzon's going to hit somebody? Because I heard Willie talking about this today. I don't want Jeremy Lauzon hitting Philip Forsberg in practice. But how do you kind of ramp these guys up for the playoffs, with this long stretch? Like, kind of what's the plan of practice and intensity and scrimmaging and everything else?
Well, I think, what we're trying to do is, from our standpoint, is Bruno will have some intense practices. Once we get the schedule, we'll be able to identify how we're going to, put our schedule together so that we can maximize the time on ice so that we're getting those reps, those hard reps. I think practices are going to be really hard and intense just because of the fact that we have some time off. And it's hard to get ramped up when you take, 4 or 5 days off. So the practices are going to have to be harder than the games, plain and simple. And I think Bruno knows that and understands it, and is going to prepare that way.
Hal brought up a point yesterday when we were chatting about it, Barry, where he talked about, a game is 2.5 hours long, and then there's a morning skate at the beginning of the day, and the longest practices during the year aren't much longer than an hour, hour and a half. Is there any thought because of, from a just a mental focus conditioning standpoint, that maybe you guys do some things that are longer than traditional practices just to try to simulate, the focus and the, amount of time that these guys have to be turned up for a game?
Yeah, I think so. I think what you're going to find is you're going to have, the practices in terms of the power play, the penalty kill. They're going to go on to some things that happen more in the playoffs than they do in the regular season as the 4-and-3 power play. So they're going to have to go through a lot longer time frame for the practices, because there's going to be stuff on the front end. There's going to be stuff in the middle that's going to probably deal with a lot of their 5-on-5 play and the style of play and maybe their neutral zone. And then towards the end of practice, they'll probably go into a power play type scrimmage We've talked about what I've done in the past with Bruno, is that we will go into a bunch of drills, 3 or 4 drills, and I'll blow the whistle, and you'd go into a power play versus a penalty kill and play some 5-on-5, and then you'd blow the whistle maybe a few minutes later, and you're back into drills, so that you're getting your mind changing from one focus to another focus. Just as a game, what you find in playoff hockey is that you've got to stay in the moment. So whatever happens on the ice, you have to switch your mind into that area of the game so that you can have success.
Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Gary Force Acura. I was reading the Vancouver paper today, and they had an article in there about potential scheduling issues that could come if this team plays the Predators. And I had to be honest with you, a couple of things in there I found to be absolutely preposterous. The idea of playing back-to-backs for games 3 and 4, but more importantly, the Vancouver paper brings up the idea, and apparently there's a league source that says they may start this thing next Tuesday, but the idea based on the Rogers Arena availability that Game 6 could be part of a back-to-back in a potential series where Game 5 would either be in Vancouver with a Game 6 the next day in Nashville, Game 6, or Game 6 could be in Nashville with a Game 7 the next day in Vancouver. I mean, I know that you're not even for sure playing Vancouver yet, but are you talking to the league about potential scheduling thing? Because the idea of a Game 6 being involved in a back-to-back, quite frankly, to me, Barry, is preposterous.
Well, I think I wouldn't read into that. I think let's be honest. It's 3,000 miles away. I don't think that it would be fair to both teams that they'd have a back-to-back, because if you were coming from west to east, we would be arriving at probably 6 in the morning with the time change, and they're not going to. Yeah, the quality of play, the chance of injuries, all that. I think that's a little far-fetched. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the league is very conscious. There's some building problems for Vancouver. They threw some concerts in there and really didn't block out some dates. So, it's up to them to move them. The league will move them, whatever. I just worry about our hockey team being ready to play, and whatever's thrown at us, we'll deal with.
Do you care at all? Barry Trotz is with us. Do you care at all about when this series starts? You know, if it's Sunday and then it's less rest time, or Tuesday and it's more rest time? Is there an element as a former coach and now a general manager, somebody who's in charge, that by caring about this, you would be allowing other people to care about something that is beyond both their and your control?
Well, I think I would prefer if we started sooner. I just think when you get away from the game, the intensity of the game, all that, for too long, it takes you a while to ramp it up. And in a best-of-7 series, if you can't ramp it up pretty early, you could be packing your bags and going home. So I would prefer a Sunday start if possible, but I'll let the league decide that. That's the number one thing that matters to me. And just once we get the schedule, we'll adapt to it. But I will tell you this today: it is a good day for our group to relax and maybe reflect and maybe even celebrate a little bit today with our wives and our families, and then tomorrow will be probably a really intense practice, and we'll try to see as soon as we can when we get our schedule, and we will work from the back to the front of our schedule in a way that will help us prepare for the playoffs.
Barry Trotz is with us. I think one part where you hit it out of the park this season was in shaking up the dressing room and you talked about bringing in serial winners, and we even played a cut from after the draft before free agency when you talked about figuring out if guys that had been a part of this team in the past were part of the solution or part of the problem. And you go out and bring in Ryan O'Reilly, for instance, and Ryan O'Reilly has all the experience, all the winning, everything that comes with him. He, throughout his career, traditionally has been a great playoff player. And I ask this question, which is, your team shockingly has a lot of playoff experience for a team that we thought was going through a something at the beginning of the year. How much Do you kind of bank on that playoff experience? How much does that matter to you?
Well, it matters a lot because I think the playoffs is such a different animal. And, each game, there's no momentum that carries from game to game. And I think experienced players recognize that you got to stay in the moment. You have to understand that it's not going to go your way. You can't have the mindset you're going to grab the puck, go all the way down the ice and score and make something happen every shift. From that standpoint, they have to understand that you have to manage the game correctly. You have to do all those things correctly so that you have great success and stay in the moment. And the team that's the most patient, doesn't mismanage the puck, doesn't, take a selfish penalty or a retaliatory penalty. All that matters. And, from that standpoint, I think that's where the experience factor comes in.
Barry, I know you don't know who your opponent's going to be. It could be one of three teams. So I'm just going to ask you about all three teams. Let's start with Vancouver, which looks like the most likely opponent. When you see them, what do you think?
I like the Vancouver Canucks. I see ourselves in the Vancouver Canucks a lot of ways. They play fast. They've got a great goaltender. They rely on all four lines to contribute, and not only on the scoreboard, but just in the way they play. And then, the one thing they have is they've got real strong special teams, and that's something that makes a difference in the playoffs.
What about Dallas? The last time you played Dallas, they beat you 9-2, and yet you guys really played them close, especially over the years. If it is Dallas in the first round, what do you think of them?
I think they're as deep as anybody. They're probably as experienced as anybody. And the one thing that they've done that Vancouver hasn't done in recent years is they've been knocking on the door. They've been knocking on the door to have success in the playoffs. They've been knocking on the door. When I was in the bubble with the New York Islanders, there's a lot of things that they've just got to the finals, got to the conference finals, but just haven't got over the hump. And at some point, they've gone through all the heartache, and now they're a team that's probably their focus is on one thing only. And so they're probably more mature to take the step than maybe us or Vancouver right now. So that would be something that would be probably in their advantage. But once the playoffs start, you drop the puck, it's all a new season, and strange things will happen. So I'm looking forward to this group. This group has a lot of the qualities that are very endearing for a hockey club.
So I remember a couple weeks ago you said that whoever you play is going to have more pressure than on them than you will. There may not be a team in these playoffs that has more pressure on them than the Edmonton Oilers. And if you end up getting matched up with Edmonton, we've seen many times what McDavid and Draisaitl are capable of doing, but for some reason they haven't punched it through in the playoffs. If you get matched up with them, what do you see?
Well, I see the two fantastic players. They're a team that has got one focus as well. I just think, they're the one area of their game that is always a question mark is the depth on the back end. And, the one thing that I think that they've corrected a lot is their team mentality. And also to me, the thing that they've corrected is their defense, but it's not as tight as some of the elite teams.
Last one for you. Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Gary Force Acura. Are we going to see any movement? I know Milwaukee's got their season going on, and I know there are some guys that, from a depth standpoint might be able to help you, might not. You got the practices coming up. Is there anything we may see on that front?
I think right now, we're probably status quo. We're pretty healthy right through the lineup. So the guys that got us here will be the guys that we start with, but. Someone goes down. I think obviously the guys like Parson, who's played well down there and has been up here. I think he would be a guy that be one of the first guys we'd think about bringing up. And obviously on the back end, Delgado and Tomasino, who is a player who can be productive. He got hurt and he's just coming back. So I would probably say if he gets a few games under his belt, he'd be one of those guys that you would think that he'd come up and help.
Barry Trotz, as always, on our program. Barry, first of all, congratulations. You talked about the players taking some time off to enjoy and celebrate. I hope you're able to do the same. And I will also say this. I'm sure this will be the longest week as you await game one, or 4 days, 8 days, 10, however long it is, as you guys await game one. But congratulations, because you guys absolutely earned it this year.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Barry Trotz joining us, as he always does on the program. And he said right there, again, hey, let's get the players, let's get some time off. But it's going to be a lot of time off. I do have a thought on what Barry said about, kind of this whole scheduling thing and so forth. We'll do that coming up next. I do have something to give away. But first, my home, I did the free in-home estimate. And I did it because I know that Window Nation has great deals, and I know Window Nation has the best windows on the market because they buy direct. They're such a big national corporation that they get the best rates. They pass that on to you. So I had them come to my home for the free in-home estimate. I said, check my windows. Let me know. They said, your windows are fine. You do not need a replacement. And when they walked out of my house, I said, this is a company I trust, because a lot of companies will come to you and say, hey, you need to fix this, and you need to fix that, and you need to do this, and you need to, not Window Nation. And so with April being here, if your windows won't open for the fresh air or seal tight to keep out pollen and bugs, you got to call Window Nation. Because right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 free. And there's no limit on how much you could save. Plus, save even more with no interest or payments for 24 months. With proven quality, you get affordable windows that meet or beat the national brands. Do not miss out. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 free. No interest, no payments for 24 months. windownation.com. I'm so sorry. I said we were going to give tickets away, and then we didn't. This is like when I yell at one of the players or something. All right, be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. You'll win a 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on the Omaha Storm Chasers at First Horizon Park on Thursday. Sounds, I'm sorry. Fans, I'm sorry. That was a total and complete screw-up on my part. Stillman and Company. I mean, I know that you're not even for sure playing Vancouver yet, but are you talking to the league about potential scheduling thing? Because the idea of a Game 6 being involved in a back-to-back, quite frankly, to me, Barry, is preposterous.
Well, I think I wouldn't read into that. I think let's be honest. It's 3,000 miles away. I don't think that it would be fair to both teams that they'd have a back-to-back, because if you were coming from west to east, we would be arriving at probably 6 in the morning with the time change, and they're not going to. Yeah, the quality of play, the chance of injuries, all that. I think that's a little far-fetched. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the league is very conscious. There's some building problems for Vancouver. They threw some concerts in there and really didn't block out some dates. So, it's up to them to move them. The league will move them, whatever. I just worry about our hockey team being ready to play, and whatever's thrown at us, we'll deal with.
Barry Trotz is telling you right there, Vancouver's going to have to figure out that problem. The idea of, again, this was Le Provence, which is actually not a French thing. But anywho, the Provence, the paper in Vancouver, Vingan sent it to me today. It's like, the way that they're going to end up playing this series, it may end up being back-to-back, Game 5 in Vancouver, Game 6 in Nashville the next day. I'm like, they wouldn't do that in the regular season. They wouldn't have Nashville play a night game at Bridgestone Arena against the Chicago Blackhawks, and they wouldn't have Nashville play a day game on a Saturday and then travel to Vancouver and play Sunday night. They would not do that. So Barry Trotz is saying that's preposterous. And I think the other thing Barry Trotz made very clear to me, I don't know if he made it to you, is he's not very happy with Vancouver and their building schedule and the idea of, the NHL tells teams like, hey, here's the playoff dates we're working with. Try to make sure that there's not going to be any problems. And because the Canucks or whoever runs that building booked the Pearl Jam tour to start where it's 2 nights, one night on May 4th and one night, I think, on May 6th or something fakakta like that. It's like, what do? You tell them to deconstruct the Pearl Jam set, play in between, or you might have to tell Pearl Jam to move. And I think that's what Barry was saying, where it's like, hey, the league, they'll get it worked out. They'll get it figured out. The one thing I'm worried about personally is I'm worried about the idea that they're going to give Vancouver the off time. You're not going to play until a week from today. And then you play on Tuesday and play on Thursday. And I don't want to have a playoff game the day of the NFL draft. And that's just a me thing. I don't know about you guys. That's where I sit on that one. All right. Something that I was not shocked by in the least. We'll get to that next. Twice Daily. They've got your cravings, and you can save on every visit. I went to Twice Daily on Sunday for lunch. It was wonderful. I actually went to Twice Daily for breakfast on Sunday, too. And that's not, I'm telling you the truth. I freaking love Twice Daily. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, and you can enter their sweepstakes and so much more. Try their new wraps, the Italian, the ham and cheddar, the turkey and Swiss, the Nashville hot chicken. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time. And they've got favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, and the new pretzels to go along with the boneless wings and other things they've got as well. So get to Twice Daily today. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
Scotty Scheffler putter back and in. Scotty, he's done it again. Scotty Scheffler, for the second time in 3 years, is the Masters champion.
Okay, that was the final call. Sirius XM, Mike Tirico on it. Ian, did you watch the Masters this weekend?
No, I did not.
Neither. Well, I would say neither did I. I mean, I guess I watched a little bit. So I was on the air on Sirius XM on Sunday. And so on Sunday, I had it on for a little bit, because I was on the air and I had a guest on that they had already booked for me to talk about the Masters. And so I had it on just so I could be like, well, Max Homa is 4 under right now or whatever. But then once I saw that the Colorado Avalanche and the Vegas Golden Knights were on TNT, I was like, well, I'm going to watch that instead. And so I could not get myself to give a rat's ass about that Masters. I just couldn't get myself to do it. And I think this is the third year that I've been on Sirius doing Mad Dog Radio. And so there are certain things that I traditionally wouldn't care about that don't cross my radar that, maybe I draw myself into because I'm going to be talking about it on the weekend or something like NBA stuff or whatever. And I know that last year I found myself forcing me to care about the Masters. And at least there was like the Live Golf versus PGA thing, and I found that a little interesting or whatever. But this year, I was just like, there's nothing about this tournament I care about. I'm just not interested at all. And apparently most of America feels the same way I do. CBS had its least watched final round of the Masters since 2021, averaging 9.6 million viewers on Sunday. The women's basketball NCAA championship doubled it. Again, same time slot, right? Sunday afternoon, the women's championship was at 2 o'clock. The Masters, where it really heats up is right there from 2 to 5. The Masters had half the audience on Sunday as the women's basketball tournament. Now, look, I know that these were, this was a kind of different time as far as the women's basketball tournament's concerned, because we got Caitlin Clark and like women's basketball's exploded. But it's like I tell people when it comes to these contracts with these players, I'm not paying you for what you've already done. I'm paying you for what you will do. And if I was CBS or NBC or ESPN or any of these companies, I mean, I think I'd rather spend my money on women's basketball in the future than spend my money on the Masters because these guys are boring. I mean, nobody gives a rat's ass about Scotty Scheffler. Nobody. And with Tiger, he's done. And a lot of the Tiger era guys are done. And we've always been told that this next guy is the next great one, whether it's Jordan Spieth or Rory McIlroy or Dustin Johnson and now it's Scotty Scheffler. But not one person. Scotty Scheffler could walk down the street and I'm not sure people would notice him. That's a really bad sign for golf. And so over the weekend, I told myself, man, I'm going to be on Sirius on Sunday. I'm going to have to watch the Masters a little bit right. And then I just didn't. Friday, I didn't watch it. Saturday, I didn't watch it. I'll never watch it on Thursday. Sunday, if you've got a good storyline, I'll watch it. Tiger's playing Sunday, I'll watch. And I mean like really playing, not what happened this week. I'll watch. And I had no desire to watch. And I had no desire to talk about it on Sirius. They were like, you want a Masters guest? I was like, do I have to? So I'd rather just talk football. And it just seems like most of America agrees with me. And that's a bad sign for golf. Because it's not like, Tiger's going to juice up and be ready to roll next year. And look, if Scotty Scheffler wins any more, it's going to be even more boring. I mean, the Masters this year, just terrible. One texter says women's college basketball has exploded, but not professional women's basketball. Again, I'm talking about if I had the money, if I had a finite amount of money and I could afford, I buying tournaments up. And it's like I can buy the women's basketball NCAA tournament or I can buy the Masters. I guarantee you they're not the same price. I guarantee you ESPN is not paying anywhere near what CBS is paying for the Masters. I think I'd rather have the women's basketball tournament. You get 3 weekends out of it. You're not going to get the same numbers you got this year with Caitlin Clark, but you're going to get good numbers. People are going to bet the games. I think you're going to get better numbers traditionally than the Masters from here on out because golf's just so boring. So, again, I had it on for a little bit. Then Vegas and Colorado came on, and I'm like, I'd rather watch that. Click. And I'm glad that most of America was with me in this horrendously awful, boring Masters. All right, that's it for us. We're out of here. Vandy Baseball, we got a quick exit today because Vandy Baseball's coming up next. They got a big one tonight against Lipscomb. So that's it for us. We're out of here. We're back tomorrow at 2. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.